Item 1A, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I love all the green. Item 1B, approval of agenda/items for discussion.
I'd like to move that we take the minutes out of the consent agenda, please, to make an amendment.
Support.
We are going to take the approval of the minutes out of the consent agenda. That'll end up being item 1CB. Or let's call it 1CA, and then do payment of invoices as B, if everyone's okay with that.
Perfect.
Okay.
But I guess I jumped in too soon
Yeah.
on the consent agenda.
It's okay.
All right, so item 1B. I move that the agenda for the March 17th, 2025 regular meeting be approved.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Campbell.
I'd like
Any
to,
discussion?
amend the agenda to add a discussion item in 3 regarding district compliance with policy 7540.02, web accessibility, content, apps, and services.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the table to amend the agenda item, amend the agenda to include a item 3E in reference to policy 7540.02. And that is a motion by Mr. Scott, supported by Mr. Gogolewski. Any discussion?
I can just give a quick explanation if you'd want, so people know where I'm going. The district has turned on social media comments on Facebook, but still the comments are turned off on YouTube. And I think we just need some board discussion regarding that being part of the policy that was changed in December.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, again, just for clarity, we are voting on the motion to amend the agenda to include item 3E, policy 7540.02. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogolewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
No.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
And I'm a no, that motion does not pass. Moving back to the original motion that was made by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Campbell. Any discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a observation or a comment on the Action 2B Policy Committee. I was, after having some conversations with some of you about the 2 different options that we're going to be voting on tonight, I think I would prefer that we vote on the bi-monthly policy committee meetings first. So I'd like to make a motion to swap just the order of those 2. So we would actually do 2B2, that would be first, and then 2B1 would be the second one. So again, just flipping the existing order of the policy committee item.
Mr. Keller, are you making a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes.
Those 2.
Mr. Keller, if I'm understanding your motion correctly, you are moving to amend the agenda to swap items 2B, 1 and 2.
That's correct, yep. So we would vote on the bi-monthly policy committee prior to the vote of the creation of the policy committee.
Okay, that is a motion by Mr. Keller, supported by Mr. Gogolewski. Any discussion? Don't we need to have a policy committee before we vote on how often the policy committee meets?
Well, in theory, if the second motion would pass, we would have bi-monthly committee meetings of a whole, right? And so I think, if I understood Mr. Gogolewski's proposal, it was not necessarily limited to policy. It was sort of all committees would be replaced with a bi-monthly meeting. So that would cover items like policies, it's going to cover other items like health and safety, personnel, and if everything that we currently have today as a policy would instead be covered via those committee of the whole meetings. And so depending on, the board's opinion of that, I know my vote may change depending on how the board votes. So I'm requesting that we just swap the order.
And that is correct, Mr. Keller.
So, Mr. Gogolewski, the outline that you created, that is in the board packet, it just indicates that any recommended policy changes would go through this. It doesn't really discuss every other committee. It's just specific to policy.
Well, in the sort of pseudo draft of what I came up with in terms of that change, essentially it would include other items as needed, which could include things like committee meetings.
Okay. So perhaps we need, because all of this is related to policy that's in front of the board today. And so, as is your motion. So I just want to be sure that what we're voting on today is indeed what is
yeah.
putting before us, that what is before us.
If
And
you
it's
look
just a
at
copy
the,
and paste from your email.
yeah. Looking at the discussion guidelines,
Because I think you crafted the motion as well.
Yeah,
And it's
I did.
specific to policy. So it seems like we're going out of scope here, if that's the intent, from what was crafted and presented in front of the board today.
Yeah, again, my understanding is that it would be basically replacing committees and instead it's having a bi-monthly meeting on all of our committees as a whole.
and that is true, and apparently I did neglect to put that in here. I thought I had a little blurb about miscellaneous items that I would include things like committee information, but
Well, and I think I don't know that that's reflected in the motion either.
It's not.
Okay. Any additional discussion on the motion on the table made by Mr. Keller and supported by Mr. Gogolewski? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogolewski?
yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
No.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
And I'm a no, that motion does not pass. Back to the original motion to approve the approval of agenda. Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Campbell. Any additional discussion?
I motion that we change the discussion topic number 2 to include the replacement of committee meetings to the statement that's on the agenda right now.
Can you repeat that? So I
Yeah.
understand. I don't know.
For policy committee, subject 2B, in number 2, that we add to that to include committee meetings as well as policies. And then I would revise these guidelines if you want to consider this sort of a draft for the policy of that.
So you would still like to move for action, but you just want to change the motion? Am I understanding that?
Yes.
I think, and I'm going to lean on the rest of you all today, but I think you can just read the motion as such. Because we're just approving the agenda, we're not approving the motion, right? True. So I guess when you read your motion, you would change the motion, Mr. Gogoleski.
Okay.
I don't think we need an addendum for that.
All right.
All right. Back to the original approval of agenda items for discussion. Motion by Mrs. Campbell, or Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Campbell. Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski.
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. Item 1C, consent agenda.
So this is where I requested that we would pull out the minutes from the consent agenda, so if we can take item 1 and 2 there under 1C separately.
Yep, we sure can. That doesn't require any approval.
Then I move that the minutes of the February 27th, 2025 special meeting be amended. And what the change is, and I caught a couple of you, I think I caught most of you before the meeting started. The copy that you have up here reflects the additional, or the last vote that we did in the last meeting that wasn't captured in the original version of the minutes. And so what was captured was the motion by Scott, supported by Keller, to make the amendment to the original resolution. Then the last vote that we had was to actually approve that original motion as amended. So it's like we had to clear out that first motion to be able to close it all up. So I asked Renee to include that in here, and it reads, vote on the original motion by Shaw, supported by Campbell, to approve the DEI committee resolution as amended. And then it lists that it passed 6-0.
And what's in front of us is the amended minutes.
Yes, yes, this is amended, but since nobody else had seen it, and this is the first time it's been in print, I wanted to make a motion to amend because it hadn't been published that way.
Okay. Motion by Mrs. Coleman to amend the minutes as indicated. Do I have support?
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, support by Mr. Scott. Any discussion?
I guess I have a little bit of concern, just, I know the intent, and I agree with the intent, but I think it's a little confusing. Because I think we're voting on the amended motion, and it does say that at the very end, but initially it talks about voting on the original motion, which I think is a little bit contradictory. So I would actually make the case that maybe we would say voted on the amended motion to approve the DEI committee resolution as amended. Again, I know we're saying it twice, but I think it makes it clear that we're not voting on what was originally presented that ultimately was amended.
Sure, it was because it's the original motion, but not the original resolution. I think that's what the original was referring to, but I hear what you're saying.
Any additional discussion? Mr. Gogoleski, I'm not sure if you have any input as secretary.
No, I'm fine with it.
Okay. A motion made by Mrs. Coleman to amend the minutes as stated, supported by Mr. Scott. Hearing no additional discussion, Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski.
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. Now we have to take item 1C2 separately, please.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer, approves the financial report as of February 28th, 2025, and the payment of invoices totaling $2,360,450 and payroll obligations totaling $4,084,316.49.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman. Do I have support?
Support.
Supported by Mr. Campbell. Any discussion on item 1C2? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogolewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. All right, item 1D, Superintendent's report. Thank you all for being so patient.
Thank you. Welcome, my Farms friends. So great to have you here. I will turn this over to Ms. Brisky and her team, and happenings at Farms. Thank you.
I'm going to squat because I think it's for them too. Hi, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I am Crystal Brisky, the principal at Farms, and Tom Yerk, the assistant principal. I am so excited to have our wonderful Leadership Club students here today. They not only are role models in our building, but they portray kindness, they show the 3 R's every day, and they're always trying to do what is best. So without further ado, because they have been very patient, thank you, I will let them go.
You guys can all step up, make a line.
Good evening. We are students from the Farms Intermediate Student Leadership Club. We are here tonight to tell you about student leadership at Farms and all the ways it makes our school a better place. This year, our club has 42 student members, and we have 3 staff sponsors, Mrs. Clay, Mrs. Day, and Mrs. Stolman.
Our leadership club helps students gain self-confidence by improving their leadership skills by using teamwork and through community service for our school. We work hard to make a positive impact on Farms Intermediate and the Hartland community too.
To build our leadership skills, we play games and participate in team-building activities at our meetings, which help us learn to work together and with people who are different than us. We practice our communication skills through creating advertisements about upcoming events for our school. Sometimes we advertise through posters or announcements to our class or over the speaker system in the morning announcements.
As student leaders, we work to improve our school by doing a regular cleanups off the grounds around farms, scheduling spirit or theme days that we go along with holidays or special events happening in our community. Spirit Weeks, and our annual Friendship Day every October are some of our favorites.
We also like to provide surprises for our fellow students by leaving positive notes on their lockers or uplifting messages in sidewalk chalk as they come into school. Our student leaders also wrote notes of gratitude for every farm staff member during Thanksgiving week this year.
Leadership Club at Farms also helps to organize our annual spring science fair at Farms. This is a favorite student activity which showcases the creativity and ingenuity of about 60 to 80 students per year. This year our science fair is scheduled for April 9th.
One of the main purposes of Leadership Club is to provide community service projects for our community. This year we participated in Hartland's Adopt a Family project. We are collecting eyeglasses for Hartland's Lion Club, and we are raising money to support our new therapy dog named Mojo.
We enjoy being part of the Farm Student Leadership Club. One of my favorite parts of being in this club is working together with my friends to serve our school and community. We hope you have learned about our Leadership Club through our presentation tonight. Do you have any questions for us?
What's your favorite part of the leadership club? Anyone can answer.
My favorite part is coming after school and working with friends to do fun things at the school.
One of my favorite parts is coming and collecting stuff for our fundraisers so we can earn money to help build up our school.
My favorite part is spreading positive notes around people's lockers and spreading positivity.
I like picking up trash around our school because it makes our school just look better in general.
Thank you. All great answers.
I have one more question. What would be one of the hardest things to do as part of the club?
Maybe if you do like to take responsibility, and keep the hallways and around the school clean.
Role models, yeah. Very good.
Taking time off after a school day just to go to leadership club meetings. Connecting to what Zaire said, kind of like consistency into our being role models and having and just helping spread positivity.
Sometimes, when you only have a little bit amount of time and you're trying to get stuff done, but not trying to make it as messy as it looks.
I have a quick question. Oh, go ahead.
Try to make your projects look good so it looks good around the school.
That's awesome.
This is some good answers. Okay.
What can we do to support you all?
Always.
Do you guys have a snack spread at your meetings? All right. We might need to get on that schedule.
Well, if you think of anything, you can email, or if you have something, you can talk. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but maybe when we have fundraisers, maybe you can help out with those.
Absolutely.
Maybe if you guys have any fundraiser ideas, you could give them to us and we could do something with them.
I have two quick questions for you. The first, is this 5th and 6th grade or just 6th grade? 5th and 6th grade? And did you say your therapy dog's name was Mojo? Yeah. Can somebody tell us about Mojo?
Mojo's in training. He hasn't come yet. He's in training. But he's doing good, I think. We'll see. No. Any other questions? All right, well, I'm not going to try to top that because this is the best of the best. So I appreciate your time and your listening to our Leadership Club. Thank you.
Mrs. Brisky, I just want to say thank you to your students that came tonight and parents for bringing your children here tonight. Thank you. Being a leader is difficult. Being a leader at a young age and being the role model in a school building. I talk with high school students today. I have a focus group that I meet with them annually or monthly, and we talked a lot about leadership. And if it's going to be a great place to go to school, it takes all of us. And your students are doing that. They're making a difference. And leadership requires us to be selfless, right? Not centered on me, but centered on the whole and the overall district and the overall school. And it's not about having an ego. So it's about being open to whatever. And of course, what happens there is it takes courage, because sometimes kids might say, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you, that's okay. Having that courage and selflessness is what will make you great leaders. So thank you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Bye now. Go home, go to bed, whatever you got to do. All right. Mr. Marino, are you in? We'll have a real quick bond update, just so the community knows what we're doing and what's coming up.
I might go home and take a nap now after that. Let's see here. So yeah, this bond update is going to be super fast. It's really just one slide, but these are the next two major projects that we're going to be doing over the next 6 months or 5 months, roughly. So the high school, we're going to be starting construction. That picture is us moving earth material. We started out at the football field, or the stadium, on the new team room, concession stand, and storage building, so that's underway. And then at Building 51, we're replacing the HVAC equipment, the heating and cooling equipment in the classrooms and office, doing carpet replacement, and we're replacing the well over there. Currently, what we do during this time is we are working with contractors on submittals. So they are submitting to the architects and to our construction engineers all the finite pieces of the project, lockers and materials and brick and all that stuff to make sure that it's been properly vetted and that's going to be fit our needs as a district. So it's kind of a lot of behind the scenes work. We have been slowed down by the frost laws that went on at the beginning of March. Unfortunately, they went on pretty quick given the temperature changes. So we haven't been able to move a bunch of equipment out there. So the contractor's been moving smaller equipment to get started at least. We do have a couple sinking fund projects also that we're starting on. I want to say back in maybe November, you guys approved the door replacement project. And so we're going to get started on that over spring break and start working on that over spring break or after hours. For the other buildings, we're going to work on the Lakes Elementary School selective exterior wall replacement that is going to be bid out shortly. And then we are working on the cooling tower replacement. That was actually scheduled over spring break. I have a meeting with them tomorrow because we have to figure out how to move the crane to the high school with the frost laws on. So that might be something we have to work on a weekend if the state does not lift the frost laws before Monday. So that's just an elevation view of the team room. Pretty simple look of it. But we, nothing flashy on that building, really just trying to serve the needs of the teams using that space as well as the parents and community that use that space. So there will be a smaller concession stand on the home side, which will be nice to break up some of that population. A training room, a locker area, and then some storage for whatever sports teams are using that site. So any questions?
Yeah, Matt, real quick. Yeah, this is all good progress with our current bond. What in the future are going to be some of the projects that we're going to have to look out for?
So you mean long-term?
Yeah.
So, with any building, age continues to get up there. The high school is over 20 years old already. Is starting to show some signs of wear and tear, given 2,000 students going through there every day. So Mr. Hughes and Ms. Boyes and myself have been talking with principals and talking amongst ourselves to start listing out some future projects that would not necessarily fit my budget, but would have to long-term look at the building's infrastructure for replacement over some time. So we're starting to look at plumbing products. Carpet is always a big thing. I mean, when you put students on the floor sitting and doing circles and things like that, we want to make sure that the carpet is nice and taken care of. Looking at exterior sidewalk replacement, I roughly do about, $30,000-$40,000 of sidewalk replacement each year out of my general fund. But, we have a lot of sidewalk and parking lot in this district. So we're always looking at those types of things, as well as looking, like we did with this bond, looking for what can we do to enhance the classroom? STEM centers, the robotics center, all those things that, ultimately we want to look at over the course of the next 10 years, for example.
Gotcha.
The bond is obviously coming to the end. The sinking fund will come to the end in a few years. And so obviously looking at how to keep us a premier district, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Do we also have, too, in certain buildings, some, bathrooms and water coolers that may not be working right now? Do we have a lot in that area?
So we don't
as
have
far
a,
as
we don't have a lot in
repairs?
that area, but those are things that happen every day. I mean, we had the front door broke during the dance competition over the weekend. And so that's what keeps my staff busy. That's why we have a maintenance department. pumping out 5,000 work orders a year type thing, but there are some things that we're constantly looking to upgrade. There's something that's going to be coming down the pike. The state of Michigan has passed some laws called Filter First that we have to upgrade all our filtration in the district. We've met all the requirements, but this is something that came out statewide. And so we'll be upgrading all our water coolers to filter water coolers.
Okay.
Mr. Moreno, thank you. Is there anything that is out for bid currently that we should expect to see come across the board table either next month or in May?
It'll probably be this exterior wall replacement, depending on the extent of it. We're still
Okay.
investigating, but if the extent is vast, then we will have to bring that before you, yes.
Okay.
So,
And then you mentioned the dance competition this weekend. I was actually there for that, and unfortunately, during the actual award ceremony, it was raining so hard that it was actually leaking on the stage, and I know we just had the
we did not replace that
replaced,
roof.
but
We did
I
not
don't think it
replace-
was that.
Nope.
Mr. Usher was there, so I had a conversation with him coincidentally, and
Yep.
he said we didn't work on that, but anyways, it's,
So that would definitely be something.
I'm sure you
to-
already knew
Mr.
about it, but
No, I did not. Appreciate that, but something to add to the list, obviously, of replacing that roof. That roof was not replaced as part of our project. So,
luckily Mr. Usher was quick with the 55-gallon barrel, so they were able to avoid getting rained on during their dance.
so.
Unfortunately, we find when we get heavy rain that we find buildings with leaks that we didn't know, right, until we get that deluge of rain. So that just happens sometimes, and it's good because we find the leaks and try to fix them. But a couple of things too, just the board and the community should understand is the sinking fund will require us probably sometime in August, September, to start having conversations, maybe sooner. We'll have to look at when it has to get on the ballot, but we'll look at renewing the sinking fund. So we have to do that in the next year. And remember, a sinking fund is a smarter way to finance repairs in the district than to go out for a bond. Sinking fund is pay as you go. You collect the money and you pay cash as you go and fix things, and that way you're not paying interest rates. So sinking fund really is the best avenue. So the board will have to have some conversation about what they want that to look like. And it probably won't be but a couple of years that we'll have to start having conversations with the community on the next bond and what that would look like. We are keeping a list. Rachel and Matt have a list going, a master list of things that we would look at after we have obviously gone through the process of community input on what should be on that next bond, with the hopes, of course, that the next time we go out to bond, we can actually drop the mills that are currently being paid towards a bond and actually be in a better shape. So that's one of the things we're working on, but more to come on that. I've shared a little bit of that with some of the board members here in conversation. So lots going on. There's always something that has to be fixed. The lakes wall that Matt talked about, we replaced some sections of the lakes wall, probably
2018.
2018, and that wall is just separating because it's connected with metal connectors, and the metal connectors have rusted out, and the wall is starting to give way. So as we're going through this process, we're making sure we're keeping an eye on that wall, and so this is what that is. So all in all, I think, Matt, you and your team continue to do a fantastic job, and we thank you.
Yep, good.
Thank you.
I wonder with some of the community and even staff and board sessions with the work that's happening around the strategic plan, if we just maybe make the facilitator mindful of the fact that, to parking lot or make us a list of things that they're hearing frequently in some of these so that are maybe high capital expenditures for consideration so that we can capture those types of things as well as opposed to just these specific bond items
Good idea.
or meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So ends the superintendent's report.
Item 1E, call to the public. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. Each speaker will be limited, to 3 minutes. I will wave the yellow folder at 2 minutes and 30 seconds so that you are aware you have 30 seconds left. Please do not interrupt speakers. You will be asked to leave. Kimberly Thompson.
Hi, my name's Kim Thompson. I think you guys all know me. I spoke last time about the village assembly that they had. I have 2 girls in school there. One of them will be going next year to our intermediate. I got some time to spend with them today, and man, their speeches, that was awesome. Them kids, something else. Hats off to them. They did such a good job a few minutes ago. I wanted to speak today about the assembly and what I had found out since the assembly was that as it goes to the flags and the things that you saw pictured on Facebook, there's a lot more to that assembly than just diversity assembly and what is seen. You don't see the flag getting changed into the American flags afterwards. You don't see the meaning behind that assembly. I did reach out and I spoke to Doug Shear. He's the founder of the Diversity Assembly, and I just wanted to elaborate on that just a little bit more. His whole assembly was based off of 4 things. Fairness, don't judge others and make guesses. Be aware, it's what's inside that matters. Include, think of others first. It is the secret to getting along. And respect. He had Aesop's fable of the lion and the mouse, which is one of my girls' favorite stories, to read. And so with that being said, I do believe that parents should have the right to opt in and out of diversity training. But this assembly appeared more to be aligned with the 3 R's, reason, respect, and responsibility. I would have liked to see that be called something else on our Facebook page due to the lack of information provided to the parents. And our teachers, did a great job coming up with that assembly and, providing something that was fun for the kids at the end of the day. So I just want to say that that assembly was more than what you see standing there. I have a niece, she's Muslim, and she, I don't support, like I said, the flags and things of that nature in the school, but I do support the equality and everything that is encompassed in that diversity circus assembly that they were doing. But I would like to see that be a conversation with parents so that those thoughts that come forward when they see those photos are not just something that you see. If I had known more about it before I spoke, I may have said less in the situation. And to our teachers, they do a great job supporting our kids and what truly matters at the school level. And no intent for any negativity for our staff at Village was made to come from my conversation last time. Our teachers there deserve respect and don't deserve to be disrespected by the parents. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Skendi.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well today. 2 things that I want to talk today, and I'm going to make it short, so I don't need 2 minutes. We saw the DEI a couple of meetings ago, and now it's replaced with 3R, and the previous speaker mentioned that, and it's a good thing that we start in our school. It's not only DEI that will stop the federal government to send you guys the money. It's also how you guys in administration are going to react and do your work with the kids. And I have a very bitter experience since Ms. Gregory was superintendent and closed the door for me to talk about my son did in the school together with 2 her watchdogs that are here in the back. What I'm saying is we are going to make sure that everything is going to go in the straight way, because we, the parents, are going to stop everything. And now that the efficiency of the Department of Government is taken under the consideration, this is a public school, and sooner or later, if things are not going to go in the right way, we are going to make sure that the efficiency in this school will be in the spot that's supposed to be, or we'll make you sure that government won't send you $2.2 million. So start looking, and don't increase the administration so much that I see right now that marketing and communication coordinator. Why we need this one, Chuck? Isn't that Mr. Usher, the guy that does the communication for you, your secretary that sent all the time the letters to the parents? He is enough, he doesn't have enough things to push some on him to justify his money that he's making. So this is what I'm saying. Try to be very efficient, because we are going to make sure that the money will come here from the federal government, where everything will be fine. Thank you and have a good day.
Patrick Bromley.
Hello. Thank you. Just wanted to share a few things with you guys. My first time speaking in front of anyone in 54 years like this, but I'm going to try to make it through. I have some questions, and some of these I know the answer to, but is Hartland affiliated with any travel baseball teams or coaches or ex-coaches? Are you sure? Because I bet you're not. How do you get cut from a team in 2024 and then show up and play on that team? How do you get cut from a team in 2025 and have players that show up and they're playing on that team? What's the criteria for making a baseball team? Probably pretty subjective, right? We'd all think it would be. What are the metrics based on? Are they based on age, weight, height? How come the dates for tryouts aren't on the school website? Every other team has their dates posted on the school website. How come, as a freshman, kids have to go around and figure out how to get on the text list for baseball so they know when to show up for meetings or weightlifting? Those are just a few questions that I have. You know, the criteria are easy to change if you don't like what the numbers say. So I guess, you know, some of the facts. I have a son who's a freshman. He played freshman baseball, played 29 out of 30 games. He did okay, won 3 out of 4 games, batted .250 at the end of the year. He wanted it to be higher. Practice 4 days a week in the fall, trying to get ready to play. I think the message here is, what is the standard for Hartland? And where is the fairness? And where is that on the coaching side? Where is that on the teaching side? I know you have a lot of rules in the school to follow. And there's a level for everything that you have, whether you are successful, whether you make a mistake or not. And, you know, I wanted to come up here and let you guys know that I think it needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bromley. Barbara Tonkovich.
Thank you once again for letting me come up and speak. Over the months of the several years that I've been sharing the truths from God's Word and the truth of the Founding Fathers from this book, Why the Bible Should Be Taught, once again in our schools, I've exposed the lies of those who want you to reject God and His Son's sacrifice to save you for eternity and His glory due Him. I ask you now to consider why you are rejecting to make a decision for Christ and allow the children to get to know their Creator and His Word from the Bible. I'm not saying don't teach evolution, but I am saying teach creationism. Whatever your decision, you will be held accountable for your decision and will live forever with the consequences of your choices before God. The institutions once committed to protecting people have now launched a frontal attack on families, marriages, and children. That's your woke. Parents objected to their children being indoctrinated with critical race theory. They objected to the China virus vaccines, lockdown of schools, coerced masking, pornography, homosexuality, and transgenderism. They were labeled domestic terrorists by the National School Board Association. And abuse of our children is only one target of the radical left and the progressive politicians exercising unconstitutional governmental overreach. Isaac Newton, I'm sure we all know who that is, not the musician. His third law of motion states, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That applies to anti-child, anti-parent, anti-biblical, and Christian actions from teachers' unions, school boards, and governmental officials. And parents have risen up, as they should. An army of regular citizens are rising up, as myself as I have been over the last few years. Totalitarian, my goodness, this is a long word, authoritarianism, that is engulfing the United States of America and much of the world. Simply stated, our broken world is in pain, and Jesus is the answer. Thank you.
Dave Van Auker.
Hello, my name's Dave Van Auker, and tonight, so many interesting topics to address, but I've decided to wade in just real quick on the Constitution for a minute. State Constitution, all of you swore oaths to that. Very simple oath, which is really nice. It's right to the point, and basically your interest in the Constitution is front and center and exclusive on your own oaths. So I would like to bring up Article 1, Section 1, and discussing political power. All political power is inherent in the people. Government is instituted for the equal benefit, security, and protection. What this means is that we loan you power when you are elected, and that it's your job to protect our power, so you should not ever be tempted to give it away, which occasionally I have seen happen. So I'm addressing that now so that you're wary of it. I don't know how many of you have actually read your constitutions. I've had to read mine too, so because going down to Section 3, Section 3, the people have the right to peaceably to assemble, to consult for the common good, to instruct their representatives, and to petition. You can't instruct if you don't know yourself. So I'm doing my part to make sure I'm knowledgeable so that I can be knowledgeable and share it with you. But I do recommend, since that's the center of what you've given for your oaths, that at some point you crack this sucker open and start to see what's in there. Because like with the religion thing that just came up, it is part of your responsibility to institute religion, morality, and education. Those are your 3 responsibilities according to Article 8, Section 1. So, bringing up the Constitution real quick, just mentioning it to you. I have to say too, I have been on a board. Making sausage is not easy. Thank you for all your help.
Angela Yarber.
Good evening. I'm a resident, a parent, and a teacher in another district. I'm addressing the proposal for a new administrative position for marketing and communication. The idea of such a position in a public school is ludicrous. Money is needed to improve our buildings in disrepair and helps students in the classroom, not to manage PR to make up for poor leadership. The fact that the district feels the need for better public relations, though, means that it acknowledges a problem. The district is losing students. It's odd that the proposed job description does not include getting feedback from the many families, almost 10%, who have left the district. This is a glaring omission if the district really cares about attracting and retaining students. I know from campaigning for school board that many families left the district due to harmful administrative leadership. For example, one family with multiple children left because an elementary principal forcibly masked a child against the student's medical plan. Many people don't like the superintendent's poor leadership. Here are some examples. In an effort to defend DEI, the superintendent actually repeated a derogatory term used for a minority group in public. When a tragic shooting at MSU severely injured a Hartland graduate in February of 2023, his email to parents first reassured all of them that his own son, then a senior, was okay. How tone deaf. You can check the 2/14/23 weekly update to verify. I have more personal experience. The superintendent insultingly offered to educate me on the First Amendment in a response to an email I'd written him. In addition, years ago, when a substitute teacher called one of my children a derogatory term in class, the principal didn't handle it, and Mr. Hughes didn't either, despite having my husband come in twice to meet with him about the issue. My husband had to threaten the board with media attention to get resolution. This past school year, when I contacted the superintendent about a member of the Junior Optimist Club at the high school, who is also the moderator of a popular Facebook group, Hartland School's Parents Group, calling one of my children an indoctrinated whack job on a public Facebook group, Mr. Hughes emailed the Optimist Club creed back to me and suggested it might help. This is obnoxious and unprofessional behavior, especially from someone whose compensation is over $300,000 a year. Good school districts sell themselves. HCS does not have a messaging problem, it has a leadership problem. And the way to fix that is by terminating the superintendent's contract.
Chris Costa.
Hello, board. Chris Costa, first and foremost parent of a senior about to graduate, and obviously a board member for the last 10 years. I'm here on a positive note. I just want to publicly thank all of my son's teachers and his administrators on help shape him in being the person that he is today. From Mrs. Piggott, who's no longer here, his kindergarten teacher, round all the way up through all of his high school teachers, and can't name all those. Hartland has made him who he is. We're an amazing district. I think you need to hear some of the positive. I'm going to be honest with you, I've not tuned in on the last few meetings. But I've heard it's not gone well. And I just want to remind you, and I mentioned this at my last meeting, the behavior and the rhetoric up here does affect our community. It affects our schools. And just be aware of that, okay? Because we have a great district. My son's off to college here in the fall, and I couldn't be more proud of him, but that's because of the administrators and teachers here, from Mr. Hughes on down. So just be aware of that, okay, you guys? It's a great district, and I think we should be promoting it, not trying to bring it down. Thank you.
Len Patilla.
Hi. One of the discussion items for tonight is creation of a new PR coordinator position. Now, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Let me guess, if approved, it isn't going to be an open process, but will likely go to one of Chuck's cronies that he owes a favor to. Chuck, if you remember at the initial meeting you held about 6 months ago where you were pushing the DOJ contract, a mother brought up the fact that you were wanting to spend money with the Great Lakes Equity Center, while despite her best efforts in going to the district multiple times, her child was not reading at grade level. She asked you about tutoring, and you said, we don't have the money for it this year. Don't you think tutoring's a bit more important than a PR coordinator? You don't need to hire anybody. I know a lot of people in the community, and they have pulled their kids because of our superintendent and his insistence on pushing liberal woke policies. So board, save your money. Replace Chuck with Dave Minsker as superintendent, and students will come back. We don't need a PR coordinator.
Wes Nakagiri.
Thank you very much. I wanted to address a couple issues tonight. One is on the position that's being contemplated for creating. And as somebody who also serves the public, I think perhaps you might have seen the same thing. You never have enough money to do everything that you want. And that's true in the county. We have to prioritize and spend our money, wisely on behalf of the citizens. I question the need to have a new communications person when there are, in my view, more pressing issues. There's issues with test scores at Village Elementary. I've heard the discussions about, wanting to expand into the trades. And those are two things that, in my view, are clearly higher priority than having a new mouthpiece for the district. And so I'd ask you to consider that in your deliberations. The other thing I want to mention is more of a legal issue. I had chatted with the superintendent recently after the conclusion of a town hall meeting where he was leading the discussion. And then I actually see reinforced when I signed, I didn't sign in today, but I signed the yellow card. I saw back at the desk that you ask people to please sign in. And I want to make it clear to not only you, but mostly for the public. The public, you cannot require the public to sign in into a public meeting. People will sign in if they want to, but when you ask them to do that, you are the authority figures. And they're, in my view, they don't know the law. Well, they do now if they're watching the meeting, that they're going to sign in whether they wanted to or not. So I ask you to put some thoughtfulness into that, whether it's appropriate to even ask them to sign in when it's a violation of the law. The other thing I want to mention too is I had a discussion after the town hall with your superintendent, and I shared the same thoughts that I just shared with you. We had a nice conversation. I thought it was a nice conversation. It was civil. We weren't at each other's throats. But at the end of the day, when we concluded, I made a suggestion, and he said, that's too bad. And it was done in my view, a rather snarky way. And I just think that's inappropriate for your head of the district to have that attitude And I hope that action is taken to correct that. Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 1F, committee and building reports. Mr. Scott, I'll start with you.
All right, well, I was really excited to finally get over to the high school last week. Mr. Fitzgerald and I had set up a previous meeting and got snowed out. So I got to meet with Mr. Fitzgerald, take a tour of the school, and it was really cool because my kids are all younger. My oldest is at Farms and I have 2 at Round. So I don't get to spend time at the high school unless it's going there for the 6th grade band concert. So it was really, really cool to see the high school. We got to tour the building, see the auto lab and the construction tech lab. And I had world's worst timing because Mr. Fitzgerald and I were meeting and I said, well, can we do a tour? And he kind of got a frantic look on his face. And I don't know, what is it? And well, the bell was about to ring and the halls were about to be full, but we did it anyway, and I got to see the heart of the action. So thank you to Mr. Fitzgerald and the entire staff over at the high school. Really exciting to get to see everybody in action, and I appreciate it. Look forward to visiting more. So thank you. And before I go, I should say a big shout out to DECA. I got to see, we hear so much about DECA and how great they did, and they did great over the weekend, but their I don't know what you call it, their office, you go in, it's just like wall-to-wall awards. I mean, they're gonna have to put up new walls to put all the awards on. It was really cool, so congratulations.
The new DECA president happens to be a Hartland High School student. They were just named this past weekend. All right, Mr. Gogoleski.
Yeah, thank you. I unfortunately this past month didn't get around to going over to Legacy the way I wanted to, but I am going to do that this month. And I know they got some good things going on over there, and next time I hope to report on those. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Gogoleski. Mrs. Coleman.
Okay, let's see. I was at Round at the end of February. I'll be back again on Thursday. March is Reading Month, is always a great place. It's always a great time to go to an elementary school, so I'm sure that will be fun. And I know, Dottie, you sent me a couple things, but I didn't get a chance to look at it, so I'm sorry. Thank you. And then Creekside, I visited at the beginning of March. They had an awesome in-school planetarium assembly for the whole school, which looked amazing. They also had a very successful reading, art, and science night. They had an author visit for March's Reading Month. When I was there, it happened to be Wear Green Day, and I happened to wear green, which was very fortunate. And I'll be back to visit again on April Fool's Day, which makes me a little nervous to be in elementary school on April Fool's Day, but I'm sure it'll be fun. And then I also participated in the advisory council meeting with the Senior Center at the beginning of March. They do have a fundraiser at Hartland Brewing on April 27th. So if you put that on your calendar and if you feel so inclined, that will help to offset the rest of the cost for that new pool table that I mentioned before. They also have a couple of other events coming up. The Spring Musical is May 1st, I believe in this building at 1:30 that day. April 24th and 25th, they do a Trash to Treasure sale for a fundraiser. You can donate after April 14th. And then lastly, June 19th and 20th, they have a Rockettes performance along with a bake sale as an additional fundraiser. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. Mr. Keller.
Thank you, President Gleabach. I want to, first acknowledge, as always, Mr. Howerton and Mr. Shanavir. I think it's a very well-oiled machine over at the middle school. So every time I go, I'm very impressed by the beehive of activity that's always ongoing. So I can't imagine Mr. Fitzgerald, how he feels with a school twice as large. But anyways, I just want a couple highlights from kind of the last month that have occurred. Last week there was a Livingston Art Council Award called the GOT Art Show, at the Howell Opera House. And there were 20 different artists who had some work from the schools that was featured there. So congratulations to those students. There was a HMS choir performance at the MSVMA Choral Festival. They got a top score of excellent and a perfect score for the sight reading, so congratulations to them. We had 3 finalists participate in the My Michigan Hero Essay Contest. In third place, it was Luca Sanders. Second place was Harley Buell. And in first place was Tim Hoffman, and his essay actually goes on to a final round of judging with the top 10 essays in the state. So congratulations to Tim and all the finalists. Last Wednesday, there was 15 students that received a Youth Appreciation Award from the Hartland Optimist Club for their positive attitudes and service to the school and community. So well done to those students. Some excellent performances by our 7th and 8th grade jazz bands last week. And then last but not least, just give a quick shout out to our unified basketball team. Their season ended against the Livonia Frost team. So great job to them. Thanks to all the staff that participates in that program, as well as any of the families that support that. And that concludes my report, excuse me.
Did you say performance? Are you gonna?
I would like to say it was a performance. I was thinking,
Irish
I'm still
jig or-
thinking dance competition mode this
Would you like
weekend.
to give a performance?
So-
Mr. Campbell?
Yep, I met with Principal Frazier at Lakes Elementary, got a tour of that building, very nice facility. Saw they have in part still an operational library with books, which was nice to see. Met some of the staff, saw some volunteers, so clean, orderly building and some very happy kids in there too. Today got to meet with Legacy kids, staff here at Legacy. Talked to the kids, presentation about drug use, abuse, and prevention. That went very well, and it was nice to have interaction with them and again, talk to the staff, so it was a good time.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I have no report for Village this month. I will be meeting with Mr. Eck this week. Moving on. Item 2A, revised policies. We have 4 revised policies that we will be taking one by one.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, adopts revised policy 6110, grant funds as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller. Any discussion? Mr. Keller, I still, and I haven't seen a good definition, quite frankly, and from all of this coming down from the federal government either. But I still, I think the promotion of race-based curriculum still encompasses too much. I think in our last discussion, you were trying to kind of pare down the CRT, or that was the discussion, and some of that. I guess I'm comfortable with that being added in here, but if this starts taking into consideration like our global studies, our American history, those types of things, I think it's too broad.
I agree. I was going to have a similar question about what exactly it entailed, because the way that it's written is broad, and it could be a wide range of interpretations that I think many of those interpretations wouldn't go down a path that I would want to go.
Yeah, I think, the key word was more so the promotion of, as opposed to teaching. General history, I don't think would qualify for promotion. Frankly, a lot of this was crafted before many of the executive orders came in. So at that time, it was sort of intended, kind of reading the tea leaves in Washington to kind of get out front of that. So, perhaps with some of the things that we are taking, working on actively now, some of that may not be as relevant, just because I think the federal government will already institute some of those conditions anyways.
So are you okay removing it or defining promotion?
I mean, I'm certainly open to consideration. I think the way it's presented today, we have to vote on it as is unless someone offers to make a a change or a recommendation.
Yeah, I definitely motion that we make a minor clarification to that. There's and I understand the reasoning and the thought behind that, and I'm in total agreement with that. You don't want to go down the avenue of history and whatever. We don't want that to happen. But in terms of suggested social justice programs or those types of things that are not directly related to our current curriculum of history and such. I think that's the intent of this. And I wouldn't mind creating verbiage that specifies that.
Mr. Keller, what if we, understanding and that you just indicated a lot of this is being, it's being taken care of at the federal level. I wonder if we encompass it to indicate any federal direction or something along the lines of federal direction and or mandate or whatever.
Certainly open to that, yeah. What were you thinking about? Do you have any suggested language you'd like to include there? Or?
We could say to operate a program of contraceptive distribution in schools, or 5, any federal directive or mandate.
Mr. Keller and I spoke about this earlier today, and during that discussion, I think we wondered if not even having 5, if that's covered by what was talked about in the last meeting, the exclusion of some of that material. So if we already have that covered in a policy that we talked about previous meeting, is it necessary to have it twice? Because that would cover this as well. And then we're not looking to clarify 2 different things, what we mean, and be ambiguous or pigeonhole us into one certain area.
That's a good point, and it does indicate in just one line up that that any use would not be in accordance with federal regulations and guidelines, so it sounds like that's covered.
So I motion to amend the proposed changes to the policy to eliminate, quote, or parentheses 5, the promotion of race-based curriculum from the 4th paragraph.
A motion by Mrs. Coleman to amend. Any support?
I can support that.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller, in regards to the deletion of or, in parentheses, 5, the promotion of race-based curriculum. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that motion passes. Now let's go back to the original motion that's now amended. Original motion was by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes.
I'm just going to say it out loud. I don't have to be the only one who introduces motions. And any of y'all can do it, just saying. I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, adopts revised policy 6111, internal controls as presented.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman,
Support.
support by Mr. Keller. For policy 6111, the change being provide proof to the Board of Education upon request for internal controls.
Are we open for discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry,
Okay.
any discussion? I
Thank you.
apologize.
That's okay. I believe this question was asked at the last meeting or at the last regular meeting, and Rachel addressed it to say that the annual audit is proof that we have internal controls and they are indeed effective. The results of that audit show that. So I don't feel that this change is necessary because the proof already exists.
I'd like to talk a little bit about that. I think in terms of just an overall financial audit, I might be able to buy into that. But in terms of ensuring that we have the cooperation of the superintendent, I think we should keep that in there.
Is there something you're looking for outside of the financial audit? Because generally speaking, that is addressed by Rachel.
Yes, I'd like to keep proof and evidence readily available to the board when they want it, outside of a financial audit.
Yeah, would the auditors be auditing the constitutionality of expenditures of grant money?
In reference to internal controls, the internal controls are what processes are in place to ensure that your financial statements are free from material misstatement, and that's what the audit does. So when this is talking about internal controls in regards to auditing and specifically financial or federal audits, that's a piece of that process. So any kind of proof, the proof is the financial statement audit and the audit of the federal expenditures. The financial statement audit is on our website. So if Mr. Hughes is asked to provide proof, he's going to direct you to that. I don't know what else I could give.
But doesn't the audit typically say that they don't check efficacy of your controls? They go through the process, but they don't necessarily weigh in, whether or not what we have in place is relevant or completely valid.
Nope, that is what they do.
But there's always the disclaimer that they have in there, right, about.
Well, of course, they're not going to tell you they're 100% effective. What they're going to tell you is that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, and that's what the internal controls are designed to do. That's what the audit is doing. You won't find anyone to give you an outside audit firm to tell you with 100% certainty that your internal controls are 100% effective.
So if the Department of
Exactly.
Justice happened to show up and say, we'd like to see your financial controls, are we going to refer them to our website? Or are we going to say, here are our policies?
We have policies, we have administrative guideline, we have procedure for.
So then wouldn't it be fair for the board to be able to see those same information?
You're asking for proof. So when I'm reading this as proof that they're effective is what the audit is. If you want to see what the processes are, yes, we can absolutely show you what the process is. But if you want proof of them being in place and being effective, that's what
So
the
if we
audit
took
does.
away the word proof, would that meet your
Document and
concerns? If we just said, because for me, I want to be able to get to the policy, the processes. If you don't like the word proof, I'm open to removing that particular word. But I think
that's up to you
if a
all.
government agency can come in and see these documents, I think as a board, we should also have that right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
And
well,
a
that-
financial audit, I mean, granted, they're looking at the numbers and they're making sure the numbers add up, but an audit like that is not a deep dive into the operations of those policies, or if those policies are truly established, what they say, and so on. There's a deeper dive that can take place.
That is a huge part of financial statement audit, is testing the controls in place surrounding cash management, surrounding reporting, surrounding procurement, all the items covered in all those processes and surrounding a federal audit, that they do test those specific things. We say, here's what the process is, and then they come in and test to make sure that our systems are in place according to what we say that they are, and making sure that they're in a spot where that there's no material deficiency or weakness in those controls. So that is what that is doing. Again, if you guys want to see what those processes are, that's absolutely fine. But if you're looking for proof that they're in place, that's all I'm saying is that's what the audit is. So you guys can decide however you
Yeah,
word that.
if it's confusing, sorry for the confusion. It was intended to say, represent that if we had a request to see the processes, that's sort of the proof that they exist and we can look at them.
So are
I
you
think maybe
request-
it's just a little bit of a difference in how we're looking at the word proof. So if that causes confusion, I'm happy to consider removing that
So are
line
you
item.
requesting a sit-down with Rachel to go through the internal controls? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not presently, but I'm just saying if someone on the board wished to, I think they should have the ability to do so. And that was the intent of the change.
I think
So with
we
federal
can
funding.
do that
Yeah.
regardless of what the policy says.
That's just a
We
meeting
have
with
that
Rachel.
available to us.
Just call Rachel up and say, hey, can I come in? I have some questions, and she'd be happy to sit with you. I think she hasn't told you, anybody no, so.
I see this as going well beyond just the financial controls, the way this is worded, because it specifically says, provide reasonable assurance that the program and funds are managed in compliance with the U.S. Constitution, statutes, regulations, and the terms and conditions of the awards. So that sounds much more comprehensive than just the money was handled correctly. So if we have a federal grant for breakfast and as a restriction, we can't have a certain chemical in the cereal, I don't think the auditing firm is checking the breakfast order to see if it's compliant with the grant, correct?
Not necessarily, but this policy specifically is talking about internal controls over the federal grants and the compliance with the federal grants. And, the auditors may not test every single thing, that's true, but I think it's in terms of what it's getting at in this policy is.
And it
I
calls
guess what
out
I'm
those
trying to explain.
transactions in the policy. It's all with the funding. I get what you're saying, Mr. Scott, but that's not in reference to this policy. This is all regarding transaction.
I mean, I think in most cases, if any one of us asked you for it, I don't think you would say no, but people change all the time and, in terms of new positions or move districts or what have you. So I think, given that we all agree that we would do it, I don't see the harm in just actually putting it in there then. Because, again, I think we're all saying that we would do it, so why not just have it stated as such? So there's no doubt.
So what would the records be you'd like to get?
It would be all the policies that Rachel and their team have.
And the evidence that those things are being followed.
For the purpose of an audit?
For the purpose of information gathering. Nobody here on the board is going to do a full financial audit.
That's what I thought. We're going to do audit for the auditor. I mean, you just want to go through and make sure policy is followed in the financials?
Essentially, yeah.
Any additional discussion on policy number 6111? Again, this is a motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
No.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
No.
I'm a no. That motion does not pass. Moving on to 6325.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, adopts revised policy 6325, procurement, federal grants, funds as presented.
Motion by Mr. Keller, supported by Mrs. Coleman. Any discussion? Mr. Keller, just for the record, I would just like to understand your point here. It would just be beyond, at a reasonable attempt. I don't know that,
Yeah, I think, not to steal your terminology, but I know you like to use the word guardrails, and I think in the paragraph, it talks about to the greatest extent practical or practicable.
Perfect.
I think that can be subjective, and so in the interest of trying to put more meat on the bone with what that means, that was my concern, is that we didn't necessarily have that, and so I wanted to try to do that by stating that, as there's big pushes to try to use recycled materials, refurbish things, that's great, but I'm not willing to put students' risk or health at risk if we're maybe using a recycled material that hasn't really been tried out in practice, or there's not a lot of history behind the health in that. So I don't really want, even though someone else may argue that it's more practicable to use that recycled material, my opinion is that the health and safety should be the first priority, and that we wouldn't want to use that. So that's my intent.
I would just hope you would be leaning on experts to give us that information, because unless one of us maybe works in a research lab researching secondary materials, we're going to have to rely on other experts outside of that sphere.
Well, as long as you don't tell me Dr. Fauci is my expert, then I might go along with it.
So I want to let the board know the reason why we oppose this language from the administrative perspective, and I oppose it, is that my team might be doing their best job possible to get the best product. And we look at all the research and we make a determination, we purchase it, we do whatever, and then it comes out 2 years later that, oh my gosh, that research was wrong. Like, this is so vague that what I don't want to be put in a position to do is that the board come back and start looking for heads to roll simply because we did the best we could, because the language in the first sentence, we did the greatest extent practicable, consistent with law, to purchase this product. Yes, things happen. Things happen. And we find out things later on, like, oh my gosh, that's not the greatest product. So we don't like this language, and I say we as administrative team in the district, because it's more of we'd hate for it to be a gotcha, and then someone's head has to roll simply because they really thought they were making the best decision possible at the time in which they made the decision.
I wonder if we add language, just the end, in present time, or to note that it's at a given point in time.
At the time the decision was made.
Yeah.
So to be clear with the public, what we're talking about here is the district has a policy that we purchase reused, refurbished, or recycled materials, or materials that contain recycled contents. They're energy, water efficient, sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. And so what Mr. Keller has introduced is a safeguard for the students and the teachers and the staff in the buildings, that we are not putting that policy above safety, environment, health, et cetera. So I think the goal here, as I read it, is we're not taking chances with, as you said, some new materials or something that are not proven in the marketplace, or are suspected of having health issues, et cetera. So I certainly support the safeguard.
I understand that, but research changes, and so we also have to be realistic, because I think that, there's different things that come out every day about various things that we thought was the best or safe or this or that. And so, I totally get where Mr. Keller's going, but at the same time, we have to be realistic.
And I do agree with the conversation that was brought up either by you or Kristen, or both, that maybe the addition of, at the time of transaction or something purchase decision, at the time there,
The other option would just be to get rid of the requirement to buy recycled materials to begin with, and leave it up to the purchasers to do what's best. I think the reason Mr. Keller has found the need to insert it here is because we're taking the purchaser and giving them kind of a mandate to buy these recycled materials. And so if we're going to give them the mandate, yes, we have to have the safeguard. If we want to just remove the whole thing and say, hey, purchaser, buy what's best for the student, then I don't think, I would agree that the safeguard is not necessary at that point in time.
But then we're leading on that purchaser, then the safeguard's not there at all.
But they're not being told to go buy recycled materials.
I guess I'm not reading this as recycled materials trumps other materials, you know what I mean?
It's exactly what it says. It says the
says-
district should, to the greatest extent practicable and consistent with law, purchase, acquire, or use products and services that can be reused, refurbished, or recycled, contain recycled content, are bio-based, or are energy and water efficient, and are sustainable. So to the greatest extent practicable, I would say means we are giving them a mandate.
I think there's no mandate. It says the district should. It's a guidance. It doesn't say the district will or shall.
Well, that's supplemented by the words right after that, to the greatest extent practicable. So that is going to be first and foremost on the minds of those purchasing those items.
I'd hope so, because it's reused, we're recycling. We're not just using a brand new material, and if the opportunity presents itself to use something as opposed to buy new and dispose of what we could have used.
As long as it's cost effective, sure.
Sure.
And safe.
Well, and in this, it would be safe.
Yeah, that's what Mr. Keller's adding. Absolutely.
Can I help with something really quick? So this is just speaking to the items purchased with federal dollars. So this is completely outside of any kind of regular purchasing. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, this was actually a change that got made to the federal regulations regarding federal procurement and federal purchasing, so that this is something that we have to comply with, whether it's in our policy or not. So that's why we would not be able to take it out of the policy completely. And again, just for federal spending.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of taking it out, for the record. I think it needs to stay in there to stay in compliance. But again, I want to err on the side of caution, and certainly, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Hughes, but I'm not prioritizing accountability over health and safety. I think if ultimately the board reviewed, if 5 years down the road we bought something and we decided, you know, if the new evidence suggests that that was a bad purchase, I think the board would probably take that under consideration and would not necessarily apply accountability to the individual who used the best data at the time to make that decision.
So you say that, but then on the other side of the conversation, I've heard over and over at this table, it's not you at the table, it's what happens when it changes hands, that it's somebody else. So I kind of worry about that conversation.
So if they left, how would they be held accountable?
Could we,
There'd be no one to be held to.
I don't know how the purchases go, but could there be something on the purchase order that due diligence was conducted on this date in line with whatever policy this is? And then at least that notes that this guidance was recognized and considered when that purchase was made.
Rachel, thoughts? It's a very small spending pot.
Yeah, that's where I'm going, honestly. Most of our federal dollars are spent on people. So there's not really much avenue for this. And it's also talking about, if you look at the Solid Waste Disposal Act and this section, it's really certain items like tires and things like that I don't know that we would purchase with federal dollars anyway. So I guess to your point, when we do federal procurement, when we do federal purchasing, we do have to document that we've followed all these things in some way. So whether it be on the purchase order or in the bid documents, that's usually where a lot of that stuff is covered, is in the bid documents. Our vendor is certifying that that they're in compliance with this, and we would rely on them that the supplies and materials we're ordering are in compliance with this section. So I think that would be covered.
Are those federal dollars used in cafeteria?
Yeah.
Yeah. So would it be buying cafeteria supplies?
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that is the key thing there. If we're buying,
Hope we're not refurbishing food, but.
Right, no, but, I mean, preparation materials, bowls, surfaces that food is going to touch, I don't, I wouldn't want my kids' food microwaved in a recycled plastic bowl, but
just getting back to what was said earlier, honestly, I think there could be a very easy fix with what we talked about, at time of, or at the time that it's been done, just to add to that, and I think it covers it nicely.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion that we, that we amend it and include, and if you'll just help me out with your
At the time
words.
of purchase decision,
Thank you.
at the end of the recommended change.
That's what I motion.
I'm hearing you, Mr. Gogoleski. Mr. Gogoleski is motioning to amend
Yes.
policy 6325 edits to add at the time of purchase decision on the end of the suggested edits by Mr. Keller.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gogoleski, supported by Mrs. Coleman. Any discussion on that addition? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That motion passes. Now moving back to the original motion, it is now amended. That original motion was made by Mr. Keller and supported by Mrs. Coleman. Any additional discussion on 6325, procurement of federal grants/funds as presented? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes. That motion passes.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, adopts revised policy 0166 agenda as presented.
Support.
Was that you, Mr. Scott? Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Scott. 0166 as presented. Any discussion?
I'll just point out, this original policy was revised prior to last month's adoption of 0611, so there are some differences, I guess, based on what the board approved last month. But because they were done in series and not together, that's why we have a little bit of a disconnect in language.
The timing was removed, correct?
Yes.
For agenda item?
Yeah, so I think the current policy has a 5-day submission window,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the current,
5-day submission window, it's 5 days, just 5 days prior, so that gives you almost 25 days of a submission window.
yep, same thing but different. I just mean a window that you have to get it
Yeah,
within
yeah.
the 5 days of the meeting. The other thing that was, I think it's not on the current policy, but it was on it's in my revision, and then what was previously there is that there was language that said that the packet is supposed to be provided to the Board of Education 3 days prior to the meeting. That was removed last month, but I think it's important to have it in there. And I think, we've already kind of talked about, the key metrics, electronically searchable. We need the supporting documents, all that stuff. So that's consistent with last month discussion.
Any additional sorry, guys. Any additional discussion? Hearing none.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was composing my thought. I think when you and I talked about this, like probably before the February meeting, I think I expressed at that time that the way that this is worded, the agenda of the regular monthly meeting or special meetings shall be accompanied by a report from the superintendent on information and key metrics relating to the district, including, and it lists test scores, enrollment, staff concerns, personnel changes, et cetera. And I struggle with the way this is worded, that it requires that Chuck or his team provide this to us every month when, say, enrollment adds and subtracts. There may be a change of one student in two different schools. And I'm not sure why that would be pertinent or why, it feels like a lot of busy work and it feels like a lot of redundancy because Chuck also addresses some of these things in his weekly updates to the community and in his weekly updates to us. So I feel like it's redundant to require all of this every month. And again, the way that it's worded, it doesn't seem to leave any flexibility or discretion.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Ms. Coleman. I think, just like our agenda typically says you have a building report, but sometimes you don't. And so if there is nothing, then literally there's nothing to include. But I think as a board, and we're starting to get into it now with the strategic plan, which is a good thing. But I feel like if we're not continually getting frequent updates of these important metrics of the district, we're driving a bus without a speedometer or a gas gauge, and we're just kind of going along and taking snapshots in time, and then we look at it at evaluation time, and it's, or mid-year evaluation time, and I just think that's too infrequent. If we're already collecting all this information, I think it wouldn't be too much more of a stretch to make sure that it's here, that we can look at it, and also importantly, the community can see it too. And again, I think we need to have the direction and understand the trends, not just snapshots in time.
And I don't know of any successful organization that does not have some sort of dashboard that acts as a barometer of how well it's functioning. And once these things are established, it's not like you have to go back month after month and start from zero and count them all up. Once you have these established, it should be real simple to take a quick look at a report and talk about a tweaking if need be, especially when you take a look at things like enrollment adds or subtracts. The numbers should be real easy to look at. And once we have these things established, it's not a matter of looking at them in detail every month, but to simply look and find, as Greg mentioned, some type of trend or some type of concern that maybe we should put our efforts towards.
Yeah, I agree. I think having them come, like disciplinary occurrences, we're tracking that. It's a push a button and include it in the spreadsheet. I know it's something I request occasionally as I think about it and get 6 months at a time or 4 months at a time, but it would be great to have that in more real time so we could track what was going on, identify trends like Secretary Gogolewski said, et cetera. I think all these are things we are tracking. We're just not, the board is not keeping our eyes on it as we should in real time. And I think it is important to have those metrics. In a business, these would be some of your KPIs and your key performance indicators that you're watching closely with your staff, with your leadership, so that you can make good decisions if you start to see something. So if we wait, to get enrollment numbers once a year or twice a year, but hey, in February, 10 families left a school for some reason, like we need to know about that so we can figure out what, that wasn't just, the for sale sign went up and they had a change. There might have been a serious issue that happened that we need to know about and address. So I would definitely support these items being on each agenda, and I especially support the electronically searchable supporting documents. This is really big. We've talked about it before. We get packages that can be well over 100 pages, and they come to us as images. So they're not searchable. I mean, somebody brought up last time, yeah, why don't you go out and buy Adobe and all that, but the people at this table, we're not paid. I do everything for this on a $125 Chromebook because I don't do any board business on any personal devices. So, my $125 Chromebook can't turn a 100-page image into text. So I think it's important that information be delivered to this board in a format that is reasonable, so we can go search it, so that the community members can search through it. There's a couple different software program services that I think Mr. Hughes is looking into that can make this easy, that most of our neighboring districts use, that make walking through the agenda a much more simple, streamlined process. And so I definitely support the changes that are in this policy.
I did take note, because it sounds like perhaps this needs to be part of our strategic plan, just from a dashboarding standpoint, that the board uses as we're moving towards goals aligned with the strategic plan to outline those KPIs. But I'll have to bring that forward when we have an opportunity to do so.
I wanted to touch on the time frame. Two things. So if we get the agenda 3 business days prior, is that still enough time if it sticks that you want the agenda additions 5 business days prior? Would that be enough time?
Yeah, but I think the 5 business days was taken out of this.
It was. But to that note too, I think taking that out walks us back to last November and December when a few of us sat and things are brought. So this proposes that on Sunday, we could bring something for the agenda for the meeting, right, as this reads. And if it's not exigent, that doesn't allow any time to prepare. And I think if somebody were to bring something that's not exigent, then they probably did their due diligence. So I think that would reflect then that they probably have had those 5 days to plan as well, just to give us a heads up. Then we have a thoughtful, productive discussion as opposed to, 6 to 5 people sit and listen. So what I'm getting at is I'd like that 5 days prior to stick. And then President Glaybach, I lean on you for when you'd be able to get that packet to us, because I know it's a volunteer position, as you said, Mr. Scott, for all of us, but can you do that if you're presented something on a Monday, can you get it to us on a Wednesday?
I think for the most part, yes. I think if it's a packet of something if there's like operational impact or questions regarding it, that's when it becomes a little bit hairy. If I need to reach out to a Rachel or someone else, but if it's complete, in theory, yeah.
So just to be clear, sorry, you'd like to include, currently in 0166 that was voted on last month.
What was the first part? You what?
You want to include the 5 days or make sure that gets added into this revision so that's consistent with last month's.
Throwing that out there for conversation because I think that's worked out very well for us to have a heads up for what's going to be talked about so we can prepare as well. It is a short window to begin with to get this on a Thursday right now with what's on the agenda. But, if I get an email late Sunday and I get that Monday morning when I wake up, then it's like, what is this? So we're just not prepared. It's a mess then.
So do you want a motion to add that? Is that what you're?
Well, it'll be my first one, we'll see. So it would be to that second paragraph. Individual board members may submit an electronic mail notice to include items on the agenda to the board president at least 5 business days prior to the meeting date.
Or if we insert the existing language, perhaps, which says no later than 5 business days?
Yeah, that's, if we keep that as is, for sure, that's.
Again, the reason this is different is because the original markup that we're looking at is prior to the policy getting passed last month. So that's why there's.
I'm with you, yep.
Some discrepancies.
I would also, go ahead with your motion. I'm trying to pull up what we had from last, so we can be specific with the, do you have it, Mr. Kelly? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
It stands right now.
Okay. So, Mr. Campbell, if I'm hearing you correctly, you are moving to add back the original language that was approved at last, is it all language that was approved at last month's board meeting? Because there's, in addition, I think that covers the majority of it.
I'd have to see it, I'm sorry, but I liked that, I thought that that reference was in there the 5 business days prior, yes.
It was, yes. It indicated, items for consideration must be submitted to the board president no later than 5 business days prior to the meeting day in which it is proposed to be considered by the full board.
Yes, ma'am.
So you don't have to make an amendment change if you like the language that was in the one that was passed.
I liked what was in there, yes. No amendment change.
But that's not what's in front of us.
But that's, yeah.
So
that-
I gotta, this is a mess.
So are you rescinding your motion?
Hold on. Because that's not what's in front of us. So then we have to take, either we do it, we have to amend the current one, or we take the portion of the current one and add it to the new one.
My preference would be to take the one we're voting on and add that clause from last month. And I'd be happy to read what it would state for that paragraph. But I think we still have a motion on the table, so I don't know if we can.
Can I rescind the motion then, if we're going to revert back to what's already in existence, right?
I don't know that you need to actually rescind because it wasn't supported.
Well, I think there was some discussion, and I don't know that Mr. Campbell understands if we need to bring it forward or not.
Right.
Mr. Keller would like to maintain the one that's right in front of us. So if he wants that language to be considered, to be added back in, then we do need to amend it.
Yep. I was just waiting for the rest of the process to play out before proposing amendment. So it
Okay.
sounds like there was no support, so no need to rescind. So then I would like to amend. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I ask, so that we can do all amendments at once, can I ask for one additional item? I would like it to indicate key metrics relating to the district in, when available, for all of them. It's just on test scores, but like if we have no upcoming bond expenditures or legal or statute updates, those are irrelevant as well.
So
Well, it could just be stated that there's no change. I'm a little leery of saying when available because I got a feeling that when I ask, a lot of things are not going to be available.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is we'd like to see that be said, there were no staff concerns, rather than just it not be on the agenda.
So for A, no test scores are available. This is still gray for me. You would say NA, not available? Enrollment, no changes?
No change.
Staff concerns, no concerns? Personnel changes and/or vacancies? No changes or vacancies? Disciplinary occurrences, no change? Upcoming bond expenditures, not applicable? Legal statute updates, not applicable?
Yeah, exactly. Similar, I mean, not to speak for Mr. Hughes, but my gut is he's going to come up with a form report on this that can be used every month, kind of fill in the blank. So if there were no test scores, it would still have, test scores, and he could say there are none, yeah.
And the board is aware that under staff concerns, obviously, I cannot share publicly personnel staff concerns.
Yep.
at least not the name.
I wouldn't even,
Or the concern, but you can say that we had a couple of concerns, and that's all the information that can be released.
In addition, embargoed can't be released, correct, Dave? Embargoed material, test scores?
True. I have questions about like what test scores. I mean, we're talking about common assessments, that's not easy to have to pull. That's a lot. You're talking about state assessments, that's doable. Benchmark assessments are doable. So I need clarification on what kind of assessments.
Well, and it would be post-embargo, correct? Because we can't release to the public.
As long as, yeah, if they're embargoed, we couldn't, right?
So all of those things just for consideration, I guess.
Well, again, that's why I think test scores had the if applicable, because we know there's a lot of rules that you have to follow, and maybe there's, we're not getting new test results every month, so, but I think everything else in there, there's likely to be an update every month.
Can we answer Mr. Minster's question, though? What test scores?
I would say all. I mean, everything you collect,
All test scores.
everything you're tracking and collecting that you're already doing.
At a district level.
It's, give me an assistant. If I have to do all common assessments that we collect for everything that we collect on a daily basis, that's way too much.
Agreed.
But benchmark assessments, absolutely. State assessments, absolutely. Those are given periodically. I collect those when they come, and I could easily do that, for sure.
Problem solved.
I would like that indicated, that benchmark and state assessments on item A, if I'm going to support this.
Can I ask what we're looking for with staff concerns too? Because I guess I want the mark for that. Are we talking my room's too hot, my room's too cold, there's snow outside the door, or what is the level of concern, the threshold?
How do you categorize them now?
Well, I would say most of those are just handled at the building level, and it doesn't reach our office. So to be asking, for Mr. Hughes and everybody to respond, I guess that's part of the threshold question. Like, what if we miss something and don't report it to you, and somebody else thought it was valid, but it was something that we've addressed, fixed, and it was what we considered minimal. So I guess I'm looking for that threshold too.
Well, and if we can't produce specifics, I guess,
Well, what about things pertaining to, let's say, union grievances or something like that, where a concern gets formalized?
I would say that there's a little more directive with something like that.
Yeah.
And then again, we would be limited on what we could share at certain points of time.
Well, sure.
But at least it sets those words, staff concern, at a different level than.
Right.
I can say at a high level, the reason I wanted that in there, we represent the staff as well, right? The students and the staff, so we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to have anything that is where they need support, or as a board, we can provide resources or whatever that, again, I know it's a little bit, lacking perfect description, but I think the intent is that we are servicing properly the staff.
have we asked the staff? I mean, there's not enough here.
Once a year, we get a survey.
No.
But
Have we
I
asked
don't
the
think that's
staff
enough.
what they want us to hear about? And what that level of, like, we're talking about representing the staff and I think the administration and everyone. So have we gotten feedback from them as what they want escalated? Is it just formalized complaints? Is it not? I don't know. I haven't talked to the staff.
I think the easiest thing to do would be to take formalized complaints of some kind, whether it's, let's say, a union grievance, or whether it's something that was reported to the police or something like that, where you have an incident or an action that somehow gets documented that requires follow-up. And we're not talking about, just water cooler, hey, I sure wish my door didn't squeak, but those big issues that could eventually take us into an area of legalities and lawsuits and things like that.
So I'm hearing two edits. One on item A that is specific to benchmark and state assessments, and one on item C that's formalized staff concerns. Or
Documented, formalized.
I feel like that could read better.
Are we, currently, I assume we have a system to track these things when they do make it to the district level, right, to the central office?
Yes, we have our own files and yes.
So is it going, are they electronic files or physical files?
I would say they're physical. We don't, I guess I should pull back. We don't have a ton of, if we're talking formalized grievances, that those would be physical files. And those would be, I would hope, very few and far between.
We don't have no electronic system that tracks any of this stuff, or that, I mean, what are we using to document HR issues I mean, we just literally type in a memo and throwing it in the file? We don't have any CRM or anything that we can add events?
I think there's a deeper issue too, and that is, we're working, for instance, let's just say I'm working with our teachers union or our affiliates union, and we happen to have two individuals that are in the same organization that aren't getting along with each other. I certainly will feel very uncomfortable bringing that into the public spectrum to say, hey, we had a staff concern because we had two staff not getting along. That would not, to me, be something I would want to bring to this table and bring that to the light, and certainly not with the blessing of the union and both members involved.
No, and I don't think we're asking for detail. I think we're asking for tick marks to know whether or not we have a trending issue. Do these things increase? Have they increased? Do they increase over the year? The details of it, I could not care less right now. But just knowing that we have these things that do come up, and gosh, we had 10 last month, we haven't had one in the last 6 months, what happened? And that can be different conversations. So it's not about going into the weeds and finding out why there was an issue. It's just there's issues that are happening, and maybe they all centered around one incident. Maybe there's something going on that we're unaware of, and then it would be up to us to find out at the appropriate level, but not report on each and every one, no.
I think this needs more detail for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, since we're on a roll, I was going to say we could talk about disciplinary occurrences too. We need a threshold for that. We need a definition.
There's
there.
already a tracker for that, electronic tracker reporter.
I don't know the board policy number specifically, but there is a board policy that we would refer to when I pulled the discipline reports for you. Is that what
That's
you're-
required by law.
That would
so-
be student discipline according to whichever policy that was.
And again, I just want to make it clear that we understand why we would be looking at these things. We don't want this to look and do a deep dive. We want to look at this as simply a gauge or a barometer of where we need to focus our attentions at another level, not, hey, we want to know all about those test scores. No, we had test scores, they came in, they're available. Okay.
Well, and at the end of the day, again, it was intended to be things that were already being reported out, right? That either you're reporting to Chuck or Chuck would report to the board. So it wasn't meant to be a big create an assignment type of task. It was just to make sure the board has the benefit of getting some of this information as well.
Yeah.
So if it would meet your threshold of reporting to Chuck, then I think that would be something we would, again, at a generic level, we had 6 incidents of staff complaining about the building leaking or whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to list names.
Building complaints, boom,
Yeah,
done.
building complaint.
Nothing more.
So now we are going to building complaints?
What?
Well, it was just, it was
I'm
an
sorry,
example.
I don't want to make this
No, no,
this harder, but I want to make
It was
sure
an
that if
example,
we're,
maybe a bad one.
we're
but-
having conversations and an expectation of what needs to be reported, that we're giving you what you want and not leaving something.
No, really, all it is just a 30,000-foot view of
So big
incidents.
picture, formal.
Big picture.
Okay.
We are not doing an analysis. We are not doing a deep dive at that point. We just know, hey, maybe we have to have some discussions. Maybe we have to put something on the table. That's it. That is it. We are not talking about an analysis.
Might I suggest that we maybe pull together It seems like there's a lot of detail missing on this. Might I suggest we pull together an example and then perhaps postpone this until the next meeting, pull together an example that we can all review, that we're all comfortable with,
Redefine the,
and then redefine it based on that example. Thoughts?
I think that's good. Yeah,
Saying
because if we have 7 people here that are all confused, we don't have it yet. So we've
I
got to,
appreciate that.
yeah.
Would you like to motion that?
Yeah, I motion that we put this for review at the next meeting so we can come up with more specifics.
I support the motion and postpone.
Can you use that verbiage?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Motion by Mr. Gogolewski to postpone action item revised policy 0166 to the April 21st meeting, supported by Mrs. Coleman.
And to be clear, are we asking for the administrators to kind of bring forward their thoughts on these, or are we, yeah?
Yeah, just an
Okay.
example of what they're already doing. I think it was very clear from many of us that no one wants this to be new work.
Yeah.
Okay, now I need clarification. You're asking the administrators to come up with designated definitions for each one of these, or you as a board are going to think about it and get with us on your thoughts about it?
I think asking the administrators to come up with the designated definitions of what they're currently doing.
In a sample, I mean, if we already have a disciplinary report, boom, we already have the test score report, boom, we can kind of piece this together from most likely the things that are already being reported and tracked on a regular basis, just not by the board.
Think of this as an engine light going on your car. It's not going to tell you exactly what the problem is. It's just going to say, hey, look. That's it.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
I was just going to clarify, I think, to make sure I'm understanding and that Chuck is on the same page, that we're asking you not to just define what's here in this list, but we're asking you to define what you're already doing. Like spell out what work you're already tracking or what work you're already doing to track stuff already. Tell us what's already in place. Don't try to define what is listed here. You know, is that the intent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Again, motion by Mr. Gogolewski, supported by Mrs. Coleman. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogolewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes. That motion passes.
What are you doing with the original amendment? Just disregarding?
Yes.
I think once you postpone,
It was motioned by Kristen, supported by Jeff.
So given that we've postponed, do we need to take action?
I don't think so.
I thought after postpone, we don't need to take
Yeah,
action on the original
postpone it,
motion.
it's disposed of.
Just want to make sure the minutes are reflected accurately.
Okay, moving on to item 2B, Policy Committee.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, create a Superintendent Administrative Policy Committee.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller, for the creation of the Superintendent/Administrative Policy Committee. Any discussion?
Yes. I truly feel that this would be a futile waste of time. It adds another layer of bureaucracy. And the very fact that we just went through, I don't know how many minutes, discussing 4 policies that I originally thought may have been a slam dunk this evening, really describes the need for us to talk about these policies as a whole So that's why forming a committee, I think, is going to be as useless as doing nothing. That's my 2 cents. So,
I do just want to add, because this connects back to item 3C, that as we take a look at board policy providers, and I have no problem reiterating this when we get down there, that there is, and perhaps we want to time this appropriately, just given the strategic planning work, this is a huge overhaul to transition providers. So I want everyone to be aware of that, that it's not just they take your policies and flip them to a new platform. It is a complete overhaul. So I want to be transparent about that because that does impact the items in 2B.
So I think, to be clear with the folks in the room, Mr. Gogoleski, you're pushing for the second item, which would be to create essentially a committee of the whole, is essentially what the second item is, right? Where
that's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
we add a meeting each month? That is
Each month?
Is it
No,
each
no.
month, every other month?
Every other month.
So we're adding a
He
meeting.
said that, not me.
Sorry. We're adding an additional meeting every month to have.
No, every
Every other
other
month. Sorry,
month.
sorry.
Let Mr. Gogoleski talk about the motion that he's bringing forward.
Yes, to have one every other month to discuss as a group all of these. I could not use a better example of tonight. We went through these policies. We walked through them. We had tremendously good compromises. We had tremendously good input from everyone. And in a regular board meeting, we've got so much to go through that when you stop and you want to perform this function of discussing a policy and what we like, what we don't like, and changes we want to make to an already busy agenda, then you get into 4-hour-long meetings. This is why I think that we save our policy changes for every other month to get together and simply not make or change anything, but to simply discuss what do we like, what do we don't like, what kind of changes do we want to make, and facilitate what happened here tonight in terms of maybe compromising and doing all that. Because if we come together once a month and do what we're doing, go what we just went through, I don't think anyone wants to do that. I really don't.
So I want to call out that I think your initial proposal of the policy committee, that would be by a bi-monthly, essentially open committee of all. That would be the policy committee is, I guess, what I'm understanding. Now that you are potentially changing this, though, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the route that I want to go, because just full transparency. So like these discussion guidelines that you had originally proposed seem relatively like we're sitting around a table having a discussion. I mean, you still have to have OMA and those types of things, but having a discussion about it. But I think now we're integrating every other committee into here, and it's taking away from the true policy nature. And I guess that's what concerns me, and I can repeat that in item 2B, or 2B2, but I think the
Okay.
separation of that is key for me.
All right, okay, and I didn't motion yet to change that either. I didn't. So as written,
So the first is the creation of the policy committee. How the policy committee functions is the next.
I don't think there's a need for a policy committee if we're going to have a bi-monthly meeting as a whole and discuss.
I think it's just committee of the whole.
I was going to say, it's still forming a committee,
Oh.
it's just a committee of the whole.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Yes.
not a subcommittee.
Right, right.
We're forming
Yeah.
a committee
Yeah.
of the whole instead of just 3 of us getting together.
So is
That's
the
how I'm understanding it.
Yeah.
thought to do the committee of the whole just for policy reviews?
That's how I interpreted the original submission.
I understand, but I guess let me ask you a different, is it your concern if it's more than just a policy committee of the whole, meaning health and safety committee of the whole, personnel committee of the whole, you're opposed to committee of the whole beyond just policy?
Then what's another 5-hour meeting?
We can discuss that at a later date. I would rather just tackle the issue of going through these policies and doing what we did tonight and shortening these meetings and maybe having a meeting only for an hour, hour and a half, discussing just these policies, and it makes it digestible for everyone.
I like that idea, but perhaps we deal with the matter at hand, has its own agenda. If policies are forefront, then we need to deal with those first. If there's other matters, security, we can deal with that. And when we get to that, maybe it would just be bi-monthly committee meetings.
Yeah,
Take out policy.
I'm just talking about policies right now,
Right.
period.
But if
And
we-
then, down the road, if we feel that it's appropriate, or if we feel it could work out to where we could add these other items, well, then we can talk about it then.
Yep.
But for the sake of going through policies right now, in a board meeting like this, this is grueling.
Agreed.
I mean, everyone, you know,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I propose that we deal with Mr. Gogolewski's motion first, because I kind of think that we probably all agree that it's going to be a little bit more efficient for us to do policy reviews as a committee of the whole. But I know we have to vote on the original motion first.
So original motion made by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Keller, to create the policy committee. Item 2B2 will indicate how the committee functions.
So,
Scott?
let me clarify. So
yeah.
does one have to pass in order to vote on two, or these are two
I mean,
separate?
in theory, yeah.
I think I'd like to vote on one and then just rename two. Take out the word, strike the word policy, and then we have bi-monthly meetings to address whatever matters at hand with its own specific agenda proposed to you.
Or can we amend one to just say, create a committee of the whole, and then two to our meeting frequency?
I personally have concerns with committee of the whole taking it all at one, because if we're truly focusing on policy, we should these policies require a lot of discussion. I don't think any of us, or me personally, I'm in the midst of spring sports season. I can't give you guys 5 hours to discuss everything.
Maybe we use it as a pilot program and just start with policy.
I agree.
Policy
Yes.
committee of the whole?
If it starts to work, we can come back and say,
So-
let's adopt it universally.
I move to amend the motion to read, create a policy committee of the whole.
Motion to amend the original motion to B1 to be the creation of the policy of the Superintendent Administrative Policy Committee of the whole. Is that correct, Mr. Scott?
Does the word superintendent/administrative,
I'm just going off of what, Policy Committee of the whole.
I can restate the motion. It was that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Greg Keller, create a Superintendent Administrative Policy Committee of the whole. Would you accept that motion, Mr. Scott?
yes. Is everywhere this written have to say superintendent/administrative policy committee of the whole?
I think he's just reading the original motion.
Yeah.
Are you
I was
comfortable with that
simplifying it.
original?
But we can just call it the policy committee of the whole.
I mean, call it whatever you want. You
All right.
can call it sitting with us for 2 hours if you would like to call it that.
All right, yeah, that sounds good.
Do I have support?
Support.
Yes.
Okay, motion by Mr. Scott, supported by Mr. Campbell, to amend the motion to include of the whole. Mr. Scott will rename it at a future date. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Scott, were you going to talk? Sorry. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogolewski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. We are now voting on the amended motion. Again, adding of the whole to the end of the original motion. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski.
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Keller.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. Item 2B2.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Glenn Gogoleski, establishes a bi-monthly meeting for board discussion of new and revised policies and any concerns that should require a policy or policy revision as presented.
Do I have any support for Mrs. Coleman?
I second that.
So
Motion.
what's the distinction going to be then?
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Gogoleski.
I actually.
bi-monthly?
Can I open?
Yes, please
Okay.
discuss.
I actually Googled bi-monthly to make sure I understood, and it does have two meanings.
Yes.
So I would prefer if we specify that it's every other month or 6 times a year or something that spells out exactly what we intend, because I don't want to be held to doing this twice a month.
Yeah, I like that, because my interpretation
of all
was
that is
that
holy.
we were meeting
Yeah. Okay.
this meeting and another meeting every month.
I'll hold on making a motion to amend pending any further discussion if there's other changes suggested.
I mean, the only other change that I might throw in there is just to clarify that this is the meeting schedule of the policy committee of the whole that was just created. Does that need to be in there?
I don't think so.
We're all on the same
We
page.
just created it.
We're not creating another.
We're all on the same page.
Until he changes the name. Okay.
Okay, then I motion to amend this motion to replace bi-monthly meeting with, I don't know, what's the most succinct way to say that?
Every other month or 6 times per year.
A meeting every other month or 6 times per year for board discussion of new and revised policies.
I support.
Support.
Motion to amend by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Scott.
I think he beat me to the draw, yeah.
I'm waiting for one of you guys to read one of these motions. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. Now we're voting on 2B2, but revised. So again, the revised language is to amend to replace bi-monthly with every other month or 6 times per year. Any discussion? It's your final time. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes.
This next one should be easy.
Let's hope. Item 2C, administrator contracts extensions, excuse me.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the assistant superintendent personnel, approves extending administrator contracts 1 year effective July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028 for Dave Minsker, Rachel Boyce, Kate Gregory, Carol Hayes, Scott Usher, James Fitzgerald, Jessica Gus, Patrick Borg, Brian Hassler, J.D. Wheeler, Nicole Conley, Tony Howerton, Chris Chenevier, Crystal Brisky, Tom Urich, Misty Gunn, Melissa Frazier, Dottie Hodham, and Jason Reck.
I support.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman, supported by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes.
On behalf of myself, I just want to say to the board, when you talk, I said it earlier about leadership. Leadership is being courageous. Leadership is being one with what the best for the district is, the best for their buildings and their departments. These individuals, I would go through fire for them any day, anytime. They are what makes Hartland a special place. And so I thank you for waiting it out and seeing what would happen tonight. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you, and get home and go to bed too, so that you can be in the building in the morning.
And I also want to say too, regardless of things that you may hear, this board as a whole respects and appreciates you.
I support.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all. Sorry, guys. Item 2D, auditing services.
I move that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the chief financial officer, approves the selection of Manor Kosterzin, I don't know how to pronounce it. Okay, great, for its auditing needs as presented.
Motion by Mrs. Coleman.
Support.
Do I hear support? Mr. Keller. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Gogoleski?
Yes.
Mrs. Coleman?
I just want to say for the record, I practiced that before the meeting tonight, and I still messed it up. Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that motion passes. Item 3A, proposed new policy, universal FAFSA. FAFSA.
So
I've
I'll
been
just,
saying that wrong since I went to.
I'll remind the Board of Education that the high school did receive a FAFSA grant worth somewhere around $356,000 over a 10-year period. We do a lot of things with students to help them complete FAFSA, to encourage to complete FAFSA, to do recognizing where they're going after high school. We have this big celebration for them. We do all kinds of stuff, and this will continue to support the work of the high school counselors in working with our students to ensure that they have a plan for when they leave high school. And the key is that they have a plan for when they leave high school. So part of receiving the dollars was that the board would have to have a policy for graduation requirements, and that graduation requirement would have to be in board policy. So this is a template for that policy. We'll work with Neola to get a policy that they could embed this into, which they are working on for us to make sure that we have it. But I wanted to give you that information ahead of time. And you'll note at the bottom, while it's a graduation requirement, there are outs for students, right? If a student's unable to complete the FAFSA due to the fact that, let's say, mom and dad say, we don't want to provide that information, they have to just sign a piece of paper saying, I don't want to fill out the FAFSA. That meets that requirement. So that's an easy out there. After a good faith effort, again, if the student parents refuse again to sign the parental waiver, we can sign the waiver. So they don't even want to give us their waiver to say, we don't want to give you your information and help the child do that. And then if the student's unable to complete it as an independent student, so they're not living at home, they're emancipated, or whatever it might be, they're unable to fill. So bottom line is, nothing would keep a student from graduating. It's simply a requirement that they give it an attempt, or at least have a conversation with their counselor on why they're not going to do it. And that'll come to you when we have the policy, which should be at the next meeting.
Mr. Hughes, will the form list on it that the parents have the ability to opt out and how they can go about doing that?
And they'll have, we'll send the waiver home as well, so the parents can read all that.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for now? Please read this over and make sure you guys understand and reach out to Mr. Hughes with any questions. Item 3B, proposed new staff position, marketing communications coordinator.
Again, this came out of the December meeting. December, we had the board policy passed in regards to two-way communication and opening up Facebook and whatnot, to comments. At the December meeting, starting at the mark of 3 hours and 6 minutes and 30-ish seconds, at then trustee Blondeel indicated who's going to manage the comments. Trustee at the time, Gugaleski, 3:11, 5-ish, could have an administrator monitor it. Mr. Keller at 3:15-ish, this is an opportunity for the district to monitor and then address inaccuracies. People that are distributing information was my argument. Superintendent could do this in weekly communications with the public. Ms. Glaybach, 3:18:04-ish, we need a means to address disinformation that would be posted. Mr. Scott at 3:27:52, this could be done with a new position. So we took all that information based on our December meeting and started looking at what this could look like moving forward. We also looked at where could we pull pieces from what we currently do to partially fund this position. So currently, we pay for someone to take care of community life and put that all together. Currently, we pay for somebody to add content to our social media. Currently, we hire people in the marketing to market banners and on our scoreboards to do advertising and things like that. So using those dollars to also put into this position, we thought that this was a good thing to at least present to the board for your thoughts and concerns. And if the board so inclined to move forward with this type of a position. Also, so the board knows, often we are, anytime a new position comes forward, it's argued that the district keeps hiring and keeps hiring and keeps hiring. When are you going to stop? Or, you should do X versus Y. Well, here's the reality, and here's a fact for the community to understand. The Michigan Department of Education releases a bulletin 1014. It's online. You can look it up. Michigan Department of Education bulletin 1014. It ranks school districts in lots of different categories, and one of the categories it ranks school districts is the amount of administrative cost and where they rank amongst all schools in the state of Michigan. There are 819 in the 23-24 bulletin. The 24-25 bulletin is not available yet. 819 public and public charter school systems, administrative costs. Hartland schools ranked in the bottom 5%, number 782 out of 819. So I would say to the public that want to argue that we're trying to add a position when we shouldn't, that we're overstaffed, that we have too many administrators, I will tell you that our administrators are overloaded on a regular basis. I will tell you my administrative assistant is overloaded on a daily basis, handling all of the district's attendance for all the staff and making sure that's all taken care of starting at 6:30 in the morning. So this position that I have in front of you for discussion tonight came out of the December meeting, the fact that we are not overstaffed administratively in this district, and traditionally, we have always been extremely understaffed, but we do the work because it's what needs to be done to make sure that our classrooms and the curriculum, everybody has what they need to be successful. So that's what's on the table. It's up to the board to decide where they want to go with that, and that's what I can tell you.
Can I ask a question?
You
Can we just get a summary of all of those functions and an approximate compensation of what we're paying for all those functions?
Absolutely.
So the marketing,
Yep.
the social media, community life, all of those things, so we know the offset?
Yes.
Because my understanding with those would go away and be rolled up into this.
Correct.
I would just like that financial breakdown.
I find this appalling. I find the fact that this district wants to hire a marketing coordinator for things that are already done. And when I read this staff position list of duties, this sounds like an internship. This does not sound like somebody that we want to spend $100,000 on. There is no way that we should be making any kind of non-teaching personnel addition just to monitor Facebook and to do other things as well. And honestly, I think there's other motives involved here. I think to me, it sounds like somebody wants their own personal minister of propaganda. I am not for this at all. I think this is a tremendous waste of money, and we don't need it. We just heard tonight, from Matt Marino about all the different things in the buildings that we need. We heard from Greg, who talked about a leak during a competition. How many times are we going to hear about teachers buying things with their own money? Why do our food pantries rely on donations? Why do we have certain buildings without all bathrooms or water fountains working? Why do we have parapros making fast food drive-through wages? And now we're going to have a communications coordinator? This is a ridiculous request.
Mr. Gogolewski, what happens when this is cheaper than what we're paying for all that?
I'd sure like to know what we are paying and what we're getting for what we're paying. Maybe that's the problem.
Well, that's what I asked for.
Yeah. Well,
So who does that now? All the Facebook's updates for the schools? Who's tasked with that? That would be freed up, and then how would their time be used?
Currently, we have a contract with Stephanie Furge to do our content providing for all of our social media. Currently, the staff in our community ed department, so we'll have to break down their time frame, their time that they put into community life, as well as we pay a subcontractor to put it all together. So we'll have to look at that. So we'll put that all together. Rachel and I will work on that with community ed. And then we also pay through the athletic account, a marketing manager for all their signage. So we'll have to pull all that together and let you know what the total cost on that is.
and why do we have a shared RSO for certain buildings in our district? And we don't have one individually for each building. I think that's a little bit more of a priority. We had somebody from the public talk about tutoring and reading tutoring, and it was discussed that, well, there's no money for that. There are so many other things that this district could spend money on as opposed to non-teaching personnel, to have a marketing coordinator. And I'm sorry, I cannot read through this list of qualifications and think that someone is going to have a full-time job with this stuff. I just don't see it.
Any additional discussion?
Since I was a big proponent of turning Facebook comments back on and social media comments back on, I'll certainly comment. In the last 3 months, I have heard of one comment that somebody said was maybe distasteful, and honestly, when I went to look for it, I couldn't find it. I think that people are very respectful on Facebook. Any post about students, student achievements are 100% positive. The only post that receives any negative flack seems to be posts revolving around district-wide meetings, a lack of notice. You know, we had the roundtable with the superintendent, was that a week or two ago? And there was very, very short notice for that, 24, 48 hours. And so that post on Facebook, most of the flack was, why can't we get more notice for these things? And so I think that is absolutely honest, reliable feedback from the community that is valuable to us. I don't see any need to go and monitor those comments or delete them just because they're not all oohing and ahhing and positive. I think if we as a district can get to the point where we're more communicative on Facebook, on other social media sites with the business of the district, that's the issue here, that our Facebook page, which has 10,000 followers or whatever, does not convey the business of the district. These meetings that we're sitting at tonight do not get put on our Facebook page. I had to beg to get the strategic planning input sessions posted on Facebook. We have given more updates on Facebook about selling a used lawnmower than promoting the business of the district. And that's not a joke. You can go look. With constant reminders to go bid on a used lawnmower, but no reminders to the public that we have a meeting here that we really want the public to attend. No reminders to the public that we have strategic planning sessions, public input sessions, and we want you here. We want your input. No reminders about some of these more important things. And so, yeah, when we have that attitude on social media, I mean, we have to understand what social media is and what it isn't. When you take the attitude that we're going to totally ignore our business and just put, photos of achievements, I mean, that's great, but we obviously have a large portion of the community that wants those as a reminder. We should be putting the district updates when they get emailed to parents. That's great, but that should go on the Facebook page. When we have these videos, these meetings that are recorded, last month we had like 1,100 people watch our meeting on YouTube. 1,100. That is a record. Okay. Right now, the comments are still turned off, so the public can't comment on the meeting, even though we passed a policy in December to turn comments on social media. YouTube is the #2 social media platform in the country, behind Facebook. And like I said, we just had 1,100 people come watch that meeting, but their comments are turned off. So it's hard to say, hey, we need somebody to facilitate this, but we're still blocking people. We're still not, and by blocking, I mean still have comments turned off. And I tried to add it to the agenda for tonight, and obviously nobody wants to discuss it. But this is the whole problem. We just need to have an attitude of transparency on social media to say, yeah, parents, community members, taxpayers, come to these meetings, give them notice, give them reminders, let them see the comments. Not because what happens is when we turn off comments on YouTube for these meetings, then the clips go elsewhere. The clips of our last meeting had, I didn't go to all the sources, but between Facebook, X, YouTube, about 150,000 views. That's a lot. This is where we meet the public. This is where we meet the community. We don't need somebody over here monitoring that and restricting it and trying to put rules on it. We just need to open up with our community and take that feedback. We received a lot of people tonight here who said, yeah, we don't need to spend $100,000 on this. We've already received 4, 5, 6 emails from concerned citizens who couldn't make it tonight who said, yeah, we don't need to spend $100,000 on it. Do we have a communication problem in this district? Yes, 100% we do. Absolutely. We've all admitted that. Is it solved by hiring somebody for $100,000 and asking them to monitor Facebook comments and be the first one to be on the horn with school of choice parents? I don't think so. I don't think this is the answer. I think the answer is in transparency, in opening up communication, and
Mr.
being
Scott,
more
you're repeating yourself. Can we?
Sure. Yeah. I was going to say, I'll discuss Facebook. I was a no vote because the comments on social media are awful. Probably the complaint that you got was about a former teacher who was called an awful name. It's awful. I'm not saying we need this person to monitor social media content and choose how to take that out, but I'm happy to talk about that for sure.
Well, and I just wanted to add, are you done, Jeff?
Yeah,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
To make use of this feedback, you say we've got all this honest feedback that's out there. To make use of it, we need somebody with the time and to dedicate to doing that. Otherwise, the feedback doesn't serve us much purpose. Also, you went on and on quite a bit about consistent reminders to encourage people to attend meetings, whatever. If we have a person dedicated to do that, to send out the reminders, to do all those things, then maybe there would be more participation and less people upset about the meetings. And also, maybe I have a different copy, but the starting base salary says here $65K to $72K. It says nothing about $100,000. So I think we need to stop misinforming people who might be listening and who don't have the.
So how much, wait a minute, no.
I have
Hold
the
on.
floor
She
first.
has the floor, and then Mr. Keller gets
So
the floor.
it's not $100,000 for this position. It looks like the base salary is 65 to 72, which is substantially less. So I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
So just so you know where
Hold on, Mr. Scott.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Keller has the floor next.
Thank you. I guess for the record, what is the official cost all in with benefits? So no one's giving any misinformation?
Please don't make me do math in my head at the table. I mean, if you got to add like 38% for a FICA retirement, and it just really depends on what healthcare plan that they pick. So the salary may not be $100,000, but an all-in cost,
So total cost? Okay.
an all-in cost would likely fall somewhere in that range.
Okay.
So just giving a salary number is misinformation.
Has the floor. Mr. Keller has the floor. Please.
Thank you. I guess, I think this process, as we kind of went through, in my mind, sort of demonstrates a little bit of the danger or concern that I have. I heard, a recap of a December meeting in which the context of that meeting was about whether or not to turn on comments. And I think what I was quoted as saying was in relation to whether or not we should turn the comments on. And I said, I think it's valuable to bring that input so that the district actually has that information for what people are continually having concerns with, right? It was not, even though it may be conveyed that way, intended to voice my support of adding a position. So I just want to make sure the record is clear on that, because again, that's my fear with the communications coordinators. It's going to take certain snippets that are favorable for certain things, but it's not the true picture of what was said or done, and so that's a concern for me. I think a lot of my other concerns were voiced by other members, so I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'll just kind of close by saying I think my concern with this is that, we're prioritizing something that I think doesn't put the benefit of the students first. I think having resource officers in every building versus shared resource officers would be much better value or higher use of our funds. I mean, I know in April it wasn't on this discussion item for today, but we're going to be looking at a Livingston County Sheriff's Officer position. I think stuff like that has a higher value to the community than a communications person or a marketing person making $100,000 when that's, three of our SSOs, frankly.
I'd like to know, yes, I'd like to know, we have creation and distribution of 10 editions of Community Life annually. Don't we have somebody doing that right now?
I think that's what I asked for, just for clarification, is who does it and how much are we paying today? Because it wouldn't be duplicative, but I guess we can wait for that to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Are you done, so I can move to Mr. Scott?
No, I'm not done. There's a lot here that it could be questioned. There's a lot with every bullet point of this job description. And honestly, I cannot, I'll just tell you my true feelings here. I think this is a reactionary move that has more to it than just having a marketing and communications coordinator. We've heard a lot lately about how our superintendent is upset by certain posts by certain people. And I think this is more of a method to try to counter that as opposed to letting those folks just fall on the swords that they talk about on social media. I really do. And I also think, too, that this may be given to somebody that's already doing some work for the district and not an official employee yet. I don't know. I could be wrong about that, but that's my hunch.
Okay. Moving on, Mr. Scott.
I
do you have
just
any
wanted
additional
to,
comments?
yeah, I just wanted to clarify where I got the $100,000 number from. So my calculation was that burden for employees was between 40 and 60% depending on their benefit selection. So 40% on 65,000 at the low end would be 91,000 to the district. 60% on 72 at the high end would be 115,000. So I'd calculate this between 91 and 115,000 depending on the base and the benefit selection by the employee. That's where my number came from.
Mrs. Coleman, any additional?
No, I was just going to say, understood. Thank you for clarifying, and thank you to Rachel for clarifying that 5 minutes ago.
I do.
Mr. Campbell.
I got 3 bullet points just for thought. It's difficult to make the decision if we should hire this. We talk about the money, is the money available? And there are positions we'd like to hire to fill. School resource officer is a great example. So I learn as I go, maybe that information is available to me to see what money is out there that we can use. And then we come to the table and say, well, let's fill these spots. These are the spots I desire to be filled. And then we see what we can with the money that's available. And do other districts have a position like this?
Yes, actually, and maybe you weren't on the board at the time, so I apologize. After the December meeting, I sent a packet of Howell has somebody like this, Celine, West Bloomfield, I think I sent, Troy. So there were 5 different job descriptions that we used to create this job description, so we pulled the information. I can pull that packet and send it to you so you can see. So, yeah, we didn't just make this up out of thin air. I had shared that with the board, and to be honest with you, this salary is way lower than any of the ones you'll see on the stuff that I'll send you, okay?
Mr. Keller, any additional before I close it out?
If I can just one more.
All right. We get 2 points to make a discussion.
All
Make
right.
it quick.
All right, one community member wrote in today, and I thought they had a fantastic idea. And I told them I would bring this to the board table. They suggested engaging high school students for communication. We have a fantastic business program, some amazing business teachers at the high school, an amazing DECA program. Some of this is stuff that I think we could get some real-world experience to our high school students in some classes, and they could tackle this and have a really big impact. And this was, again, a suggestion from a community member that I thought was just fantastic.
Absolutely. And it doesn't take much time to make a Facebook post of when the next meeting
Okay.
is. So, yeah.
We're moving on. Item 3C, Board Policy Provider. Board, in front of you, you will find 1, 2, 3, 4 for consideration. You can go to their website. You can also see which districts are using them, which districts aren't. Obviously, we have some neighboring districts using Neola, some that have switched to Thrun, and then we have LESA uses Miller Johnson, and Grosse Pointe uses a different attorney firm. Mr. Keller, I know you were trying to get one, but I never got feedback on that.
Yeah, I didn't get it in time. Is it still open, or is it?
I mean, you would just have to send it to the board. So do your due diligence in understanding, maybe go to the sites. Cost is here. If you go and look on these districts, you can see how they're hosted. So if they're hosted by Board Docs, if they're hosted by somebody else, and what, we can discuss what those hosting fees are. Although it sounds like, and Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, the hosting fee is like built into this, into the fee of some of these platforms.
I know it is for Neola. I don't know
Okay.
about these other ones.
So, and we can clarify that if we start going down a pathway. Again, this is a huge undertaking, so I want the board to understand that because it is not just a copy and paste. It is actually a full review of every single policy. And so just from a timing standpoint, we're obviously in the midst of a strategic plan. The timing of this would be would need to be very, we would need to be thoughtful to achieve what we wanted to achieve, and it takes a while. It's not overnight, it's not a month, it's several months, potentially a year. It takes a long time. I know it took Brighton a tremendous amount of time to transition theirs. And so reach out, look for these, call districts, call other board members, see what their experience is. And I would welcome you guys to obviously provide me feedback. We can, again, continue this as a discussion item next week if we want to start drilling down. I don't think there's any time sensitivity to much of this because it is a very thoughtful and legitimate, lengthy process.
Can I ask one question? Do we own our policies right now? If we fire Neola tomorrow, do we own them?
We wouldn't, if we fired Neola, we wouldn't have access to them online. We have the hard copies that are sitting in my office that I apologize, I didn't bring them today, totally forgot. But yeah, we have them because
Right.
we've paid for them up to now.
Right,
So
But
it
they
sounds like
wouldn't
we don't
host
have them hosted. We would just have hard.
right. Or, okay, but we own them? Yeah, there's no, okay. And then are these, so like Thrun, for example, if we hire them, are they going to take our current policy manual and revise it? Or are they going to throw it out and bring a whole new?
My understanding is part of the process is a little bit of both. I think they look at what their standard structure foundation would be. They take what we have, make suggestions, and it's kind of a back and forth. I think there'd be some policies that would probably go out the window and they would suggest different ones. And then there'd be policies where they say, switch this around, add this, delete this, would be our recommendation. So I think it's all of the above. It's not and or.
And I think, just so you know, when Megan says this is time, literally going through every policy to compare, what do you have now? What do you want to keep? What do you want to not keep? And is it their legal advice, whoever we use, should you not throw that away or should you keep it?
There's one thing, though, that when you had the list of these companies, who sent that to you?
So Neola is our current one. I knew that Brighton used Thrun. We asked LESA who they used. They used Miller Johnson, and then Clark Hill was just another one that we found is being used.
So when you got that letter showing those companies, that was sent from Lisa?
Oh, no. I asked, I labeled, Mr. Hughes went out to each of these companies to provide us the summary. So I said we need to take a look at different options. I know Mr. Keller is still trying to research an option.
Yeah.
And so that we had different options to look at. No one sent us this list. This was a list derived by Mr. Hughes in providing us options.
Okay, I just wondered because it said Mrs. Gleibach.
Yeah, sorry, this is from Mr. Hughes.
Okay, all right. Good.
All right. Item 3D, 3R revision request by Mr. Gogoleski.
There was a separate email sent by Megan. Thank you for sending that out. And it shows and highlights the change that I am proposing, where we take out the one line that takes the word all and then categorizes everyone into a political identity subgroup. Because if we're going to say we are all Eagles, all means all unless there's a memo I did not get.
My question to this is, you had noted that it's a DEI statement, but when I try to, again, the definition from DEI has not necessarily been a clear definition, but in reference to the Dear Colleague letter, which was my only reference, is things like relying on non-racial information as a proxy for race, making decisions based on that information, placing people into certain racial groups and teaching that certain racial groups bear unique moral burdens, and then treating students differently based on race to achieve goals. I could go on and on, but you've read it.
Well, yeah, but my question is, why do we use the word all 4 times and then we have this distinct subgroup and categories of quote unquote protected classes and have that in there? Why? What's the purpose?
Where are you noting protected classes? Because it indicates that there's no any individual that's superior or inferior.
In the respect paragraph, after the word inferior, we have based on sex, including sexual orientation, transgender identity, disability, age, height, weight, English-speaking status, race, class, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin, or ancestry. Why?
Can I, Chuck, can I ask a clarifying question? I think you might have the answer for this. I was part of the team that revised the 3 Rs or created the definition, and I believe at the time, when?
Do you know what year that was?
22?
Yeah.
I think 22 or 23?
21, 22.
22, okay. But I think it was directly from, it's legalese. It was copied directly from something else.
Right.
Whether it was an MCL or Elliott Larson or something, it was copied directly from something else, and that verbiage was used in other places in the district as well. So I think that's why it was decided to be used in that definition, because that's how it was stipulated legally. Is that correct?
Yeah, and just so the board understands, as the committee, as the team that looked at that and made the recommendation to the board at the time, and the board adopted it, when the Michigan Department of Office of Civil Rights came into the district originally and created a list of things they wanted from us to show that we were in compliance with federal law, the very first question was, show us all the places where you're in compliance for advertising and sharing that you're a non-discriminatory school district, including the protected classes. And so we had to pull all the places in the district where we do that. And that was another place that we felt it fit and it was appropriate to ensure that when we talk about all, we're talking about all equals all, including all of these children. And that's why it was put in there.
Okay. Yeah, I think in a statement that tries to foster unity and really stoke the fires of saying we are all Hartland Eagles and then divide people into categories, I think that's kind of a self-defeating statement. And last month, you told me, Mr. Hughes, that we talked about this, and I said, you told me in your office that this was a requirement that had to be put in, and then you told me last month no, and now you're telling me again that this was something that they were looking for. So basically, was this a requirement or not?
Absolutely not. I was very honest with you. It was not required. The team felt it fit there. It was the right place for it to be able to ensure that our community and our students and our staff knew that all equals all had an expectation that it's everybody, including those individuals.
And the word all doesn't cover it. We need to put all of these subgroups and identity politics categories in here. I don't think that that's needed, and I think it cheapens the effect of the rest of the 3 Rs. I really do.
Yeah, I think it does make it read like legalese, not like a unity statement. I mean, I think it's important that our 3 Rs unite everybody, that they seem, genuine. We got to hear at the round table a couple weeks ago, we got to hear how the 3 Rs were created by, was it student government back in 93, 92? And how they came up with that. So to take what is, what's been here for 30 some years and unites us and then start punching in legalese, I don't like that either. I like to have it all. We're all Hartland Eagles. I don't, we could keep adding to that list for the next 50 years until it takes over the whole statement and come up with every group that is under all. But I agree with Mr. Gogoleski. All is pretty clear. I don't see a need to start dividing our students or staff into groups. We are all Hartland Eagles.
And I think you'd be extremely hard-pressed to find anyone with any level of sanity that would have anything against reason, respect, and responsibility as written, minus that statement. I think this is one thing that in this community, everyone agrees on, everyone likes. There's nothing bad about it whatsoever. And then to have that disclaimer, like a disclaimer on a drug commercial, if this gives you 3 eyeballs, discontinue use. I don't understand why it's in there, and I think it should be taken out.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Keller, or Mrs. Coleman?
Yeah, thank you. I do want to just add, I saw in Friday's Did You Know there was a resolution that sort of talked about updating the 3 Rs, but it wasn't on the agenda for today. But I was wondering if, Mr. Hughes, you could kind of give the board an overview of what the team did to kind of come back and look at last month's or last meeting's resolution. And does this fit in with what Mr. Gogoleski is proposing? Would that be something that we would add in addition to?
No, I don't.
3 Rs, or is this?
No, I don't think it has any bearings on Mr. Gogoleski's motion. I think what the resolution that the administrators are going to ask the board to adopt puts all of this stuff behind us and moves us forward. And the 3 Rs in that resolution indicates that we will, all the conversation that we have in this district that we've had for 2 years now, it falls under the 3 Rs, and that we're going to approach how we educate children and what we do under the 3R umbrella, and that's how we will do it. And so it has no bearing on that. The resolution of itself is very self-explanatory, and as I said to the board, you gave us an assignment. I think we spent more than 25 hours, and that's 25 hours of my time. That doesn't include all of the extra time that all of our administrators worked 2 meetings on. So I just lumped everybody into 25 hours of total sit time. And so when we look at that, it's time to move forward. It's time to, and hopefully you've read that very clearly. You gave us the assignment. We created that plan. You hopefully will see that we did our due diligence. I hope to be able to share that with the community on Wednesday in my community update, and I'll put it on our website as a resource under the superintendent's update page so everybody can see that work and what we're going to ask the board to do in April. So the time is, from our perspective, that we've met the obligations under the Dear Colleague letter, outlined it for you, and we're going to move forward with hoping that we can move forward. We cannot continue to worry at this table, and what we hear constantly is this happened before, this happened before, this happened. It's time to move past that. It's time to say, let's worry about the future, and that's what that's all about.
So are we voting on this
Hold on.
in April?
No, Mr. Gogoleski, Mr. Keller has the floor.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my questions. Because it wasn't on, again, I thought it would be on the agenda, so I think
I think a resolution came forward from somebody on this team earlier. Resolution is not board policy, it's a resolution. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a discussion item. We've given it to you, we're going to bring it forward.
With all due respect, if you went through all the trouble to do all the work and get ready, I don't understand why it wouldn't be in this packet
And it's
today.
magically going to come up next month?
We can add it as a discussion item.
Sure.
I haven't made the agenda for next month.
Well,
Geez, oh,
good.
Pete.
Then let's make it an agenda discussion item.
All right.
And then we'll vote on it in May, because I've got a real problem with the rebranding.
Mr. Campbell has not had you've had 3 times to speak, so let's give him the floor, and then I'll circle back. You're all set?
What we have in one of these is that one of these statements in this resolution, be it further resolved that the Board of Education will refer to social emotional learning as reason, respect, and responsibility. So we're going to rebrand reason, respect, and responsibility as SEL.
So let's focus on the revision request for 3 Rs, and we'll focus on that when we come back. How's that? Because the item right now is the 3R revision requested.
If
not that
we're going to
document.
discuss this next month, fine. Okay.
Okay. So again, let's focus on item 3D. Any additional discussion on item 3D?
Real quick, I agree with Mr. Hughes that we need to move forward. We need to put all of this.
Are you talking about the resolution, or are you talking about 3 Rs? Mr. Gogoleski?
Both. I think it's all tied together. I'm not talking about the resolution. I'm talking about 3 Rs.
Okay,
And moving
keep it to the
forward.
3 Rs.
And the necessity to untether, all it has been from the 3 Rs. We have spent the last 4 years stuffing DEI into the 3 Rs, stuffing SEL into the 3 Rs, all this stuff, and now we want to move forward. Great, we need to remove that controversial stuff and move forward as it was written. So I would agree with Mr. Gogoleski that removing the groups and the protected classes, I'm not saying you remove protected classes from the official policies of the district, but to a student who's sitting in the classroom reading about the 3 Rs, I don't see how it makes sense that all, like he said, all doesn't mean all. And that they would have to think, well, is this group the same? Is this group that, like, I don't understand why we have to list out the groups. And that came from the negativity that we're trying to move past. So I want to untether from that and move forward.
Mrs. Coleman,
I'm good.
do you guys have any secondary items to add? Okay. Moving on. Item 4A, future meetings, right here, April 21st, 2025 at 6:30. Item 5B, do any of you have any informational items to share? Any events?
Yeah, real quick, April 3rd in this room from 6 to 7 is strategic planning input. So anybody left or anybody listening online, if you didn't make it to the last session, this is a great opportunity. I heard it was a really good experience with the facilitator we've hired and the general public at the last meeting. But this is your chance to have your voice heard and really guide the district forward for the next 10, 15 years. So I highly encourage you to attend on April 3rd if at all possible. If you can't make it, or even if you can, please also fill out the survey that's been included in Mr. Hughes' weekly update last week or the week before, I believe, and give us your input. Thank you.
All righty. Item 5, adjourned.